What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I am so honored to introduce you all to cult and cult abuse survivor, overcomer, and now whistleblower for the very first time today, Vice President of the nonprofit Tucson Pops Orchestra, freelance social media photographer, future cosmetology school graduate, Penn State University alum, former digital content creator for KGUN9, artist, creative, and an incredible hero stepping up today to break the silence on cult abuse and to educate on how victims can take steps to get out, Caleb Fernández. A little bit about Caleb and what you guys can expect to hear about on today's episode. Born and raised in a Southern California cult, Caleb entered the world already entangled in a web of multi-generational cult abuse. Multiple church leaders were personally involved in his torment. He endured ritual abuse during childhood, encounters with human trafficking, and the insidious machinery of mind control. He speaks openly of the influence of unclean spirits at work within the infamous Calvary Chapel and carries the conviction that this organization operates as a cult, one whose chains must be named so others can break free. Yet, even as a child, something inside him refused to be extinguished. Caleb has always possessed an innate affinity for creative collaborations. Throughout his early education, he poured his soul into musical theater, discovering in performance, music, and collective artistry a language that spoke louder than fear. That same creative current carried him forward. He earned a bachelor's degree from Penn State University in advertising and public relations, then moved straight to New York City. There he mastered the disciplines of production assistance, photography, and art direction, skills that would later become instruments of both personal expression and advocacy. Today, at 33, Caleb stands as living proof that survival is not merely endurance, but transformation. His journey toward freedom began in his early 20s and reached its triumphant culmination when he finally escaped the cult in 2025. It's been tough, he says, with quiet strength, but I'm taking it day by day. Every step forward has been an act of radical courage. His testimony is not only deeply moving, it serves as irrefutable evidence and a clear, urgent message. Calvary Chapel is a cult, and there are practical, life-saving steps anyone still trapped inside can take to get out. Now a dedicated survivor advocate, Caleb channels his hard-won wisdom into lifting up others. He now serves as vice president of the Tucson Pops Orchestra, a nonprofit where music becomes medicine and community becomes sanctuary. He continues to practice freelance photography, manages social media accounts with strategic brilliance, and draws on his expertise in shooting still and moving images, retouching, scripting, editing, event planning, and brand representation. With cosmetology school on the horizon, his creative vision keeps expanding, proof that the same hands once bound can now create beauty, connection, and new beginnings. Caleb is so much more than a survivor. He is a living symphony of resilience, a man who took the shattered notes of his past and composed a future filled with purpose, artistry, and fierce advocacy. His story reminds every person who has ever felt trapped, silenced, or broken that the light inside you is stronger than any cult, any abuse, and any chain. From the depths of unimaginable darkness, Caleb has risen, not just to survive, but to sing, to create, to lead, and to show others the way out. His voice carries the unmistakable sound of freedom, and that sound is changing lives. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, survivor and warrior, walking miracle, voice for the voiceless, cult abuse educator and survivor advocate, passionate purveyor of truth, content visionary and creator, my new friend, and chain breaker, the one, the only, Caleb Fernández. Caleb, it is an honor to have you on today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Emma, for that amazing intro. I mean, you need to get an award from YouTube for your intro.
It's my honor. You're so deserving of it. Your story is just mind blowing. And we really are lucky that you're here today to be able to educate us. And I'm actually excited to talk about this topic today, not because it's a happy topic, but because, for one, we get to celebrate that you're here and educating us on it when you could still be caught up in the cult. It's such an amazing, triumphant celebration that we get to have today that you escaped. And so, not even that long ago, it was just 2025 that you finally got out. But also because this type of abuse in these mega churches runs so rampant, and yet so many victims are either still entrapped or they're silenced and they're gaslit or they are too scared to come forward. And Calvary Chapel has been brought up a couple times on my podcast, never in depth the way that we're going to do today, but I know that there has to be so many more survivors out there. So you get the opportunity today to be a voice for them. And my hope and prayer is that more survivors come forward and connect with you and find their strength in your testimony today and feel empowered and less victimized, and that we're giving them the torch to take their power back from the people that victimize them. So such an honor to have you on today. And I thought I would ask, this is your first time sharing your testimony, and I'm really honored that you chose this platform versus any other podcast that probably would have loved to talk to you. But I wanted to ask you about coming forward and that decision and why you're deciding to come forward and speak about this today.
Well, you kind of said it, where as a child, like that curiosity or even the creativity, but specifically the curiosity. I've always, as a child, I remember even being in Calvary Chapel, and I must have been like maybe 5, not even 6, and I remember in the sanctuary asking, like, wait, I thought Jesus already came back. And they're like, no, 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 that's the first time he's going to come back again. And um, as a child, I would ask things that they didn't want me to ask. So something as simple as that, and them saying like, oh, okay, he's coming back. And then you're thinking, okay, but wait, I thought he already came back. So that was, and I don't want to make this conversation about whether Jesus is real or not, because that's not what this is. When I went to college, though, Penn State, I was like, okay, I know this Jesus guy, like, I've learned about him my whole life, but I want to study what I've been just looking up on Wikipedia, as a high schooler. And so I enrolled in like Jewish study courses. I enrolled in study of ancient Egypt. I surrounded with myself with as many of those electives as I could. And I needed to, because I couldn't just keep going to my parents and asking them, oh, what about this? And especially because, like, right before you began, we mentioned the Masons. Like, my dad and my brother are Freemasons, and I remember even looking that up in high school. They're like, oh, we can't tell you what we do. And I remember looking on the computer and being like, you realize your rituals are online. Like, and I remember I like printed out a paper and showed them, and I was like, you realize like all your secrets are right here online. Like, it can't be that secretive. And so, like, there are so many little twists and turns in my story, and it doesn't even like the most controversial stuff isn't even me leaving. I feel like that is very controversial, but the stuff that led up to it is why I finally left. And I knew that like when I claimed that Calvary Chapel has unclean spirits there, it's like it's obviously a church, and it's a mega church in some areas. Like in LA, the Costa Mesa one, I think, is like can hold like 15,000 people or something like that. Like, they're massive. And my Calvary Chapel experience is, I'm born and raised in it, but I live inland California, so east of San Diego. It's like San Diego County, and then my county, and then Mexico right below us. So we're like as south as you can get. And growing up, I always heard of like Chuck Smith pretty much being like the Pope of all Calvary Chapel. Like, it was even made clear to me that all Calvary Chapels run the way he wants them run. and if anything objects to that, you can get out. And I'm going to be, kind of skipping a little around, but I even last year when I finally decided to leave, and I can get into that, I had a legal issue, and my lawyer, I figured I was like, I don't want to get a lawyer from around here. It's so small in this area that like like because my dad was a cop, he knows all the police. Like, everybody kind of knows everybody. It's small town enough that it has that. And I didn't want to get a lawyer that would potentially be connected to all this. And I got a lawyer from Orange County or like Burbank, that area. And when he got here and after everything was done, he told me, he was like, yeah, I actually know what Calvary Chapel is. Like, one of my buddies was going to their Bible college in Costa Mesa for a little bit, and he raised his hand to ask a question, and Chuck Smith was there, like, teaching the class, and like he belittled him, and like basically everybody understood, like, you don't ask questions, not even at the Bible college. Like, you listen to what they say, and then that's it. And so I felt completely validated, like, especially this last year. I'm like, okay, I'm moving in the right direction. Things are a little tough, but just something like that, like, that's my lawyer. He could have just like said whatever, kid, but he was like, I actually know what that is. Like, yeah, and that's a toll. But during the court proceedings, I was told to call it a dogmatic search, or a dogmatic. He was like, don't call it a cult, call it a dogmatic theology. I think that's the verbiage he wanted me to, because um like, I can't get into what happened in court, but it basically, there was triangulation from the church, people involved, my family, and right now I'm in a good place. I'm safe. I'm okay. But it it was hard having to go through what my home was, because a lot of people consider like Calvary Chapel their home, at least people who are part of it. Like, I grew up thinking if I couldn't find my parents for like 2 minutes, the rapture had come and they were gone. And that's something that I've heard from actually a lot of people who were involved with Calvary, that like I know that there's the pre-tribulation, post-tribulation type of Christian communities, and Calvary Chapel is very much like the tribulation coming, like, and we're all going to be safe. And but what I found astounding was looking up other people's stories, is that they have that same, like, it's legit PTSD. Like, if I literally was in my house or like at Walmart, and then I lost sight of my parents for like a couple minutes, I remember literally thinking, I've been left behind, the rapture came. And like, there were all these, eh, to me, to look back on it, I laugh, but I realized that, like, as a child, I was really traumatized. I was like asking forgiveness every time someone said God's name in vain, and then I was asking forgiveness for thinking it in my head, and then I was asking forgiveness. There was just like a lot that I don't think a child needs to be um, pressured with nor confused by. And it was all with, like, I really do want to talk a lot about my parents in this, because before the Calvary Chapel church was built, they hosted Bible studies at our house. And that kind of goes even to how Calvary Chapel was formed, like in the 60s or whatever. They met on the beach. It was supposed to be like this little hippie movement. And I really do think that the spirit just got to people's heads, because, like, God is everywhere. God is part of us, even if we don't want God, right? Like, God will let us do what we want, but God's always going to play a role in our life. And I knew that, but what I also was picking up, and it wasn't just me, it was other people who would work at the church and then like quit and say like they didn't see God there. Or it was also like, as a child, yes, I did musical theater, but I remember being at that church, like the church Calvary Chapel Centro. They had us do a lot of weird rituals, and that's what I want to focus on for the specific unclean example. Like, I remember our pastor saying, I had a dream that when we opened a new church, it was going to be a row of you as clowns. And so me as a kid thinking like, oh, that's okay, that's fine. Like I want to dress up and have fun. Okay, I'll do that. But as I got older, I started piecing things like that together with other ritual abuse, as well as like in our initial email, I mentioned that my pastor's son dated Katy Perry. And so, and that was his like claim to fame within the Calvary Chapel community, because I mean, we don't need to talk about Katy Perry. She's from a different church and who knows what her parents are involved in. It's all, it's all alleged. But at least for myself, like I would hear these little things all throughout. And I know in a lot of people's cult testimonies, they'll talk about like what they were being like um, formed into, like what their parents wanted them to become. And I'm pretty sure that what my parents were kind of training with the rest of the Calvary Chapel community, I think they wanted me to be like on stage. I don't know necessarily as a pastor, but like one of those who would go in and like a charismatic leader, right? I mean they like I had the musical theater for it. When I came back from New York City after modeling for a bit and then doing all that photograph and moving image, still image, that specialization, I knew that I had a lot of skills, but I didn't necessarily want to bring it back to the church. And they kept trying to get me back to the church. And I was willing as like, okay, this is my church. But the more I got involved, the more they started to say, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I was like, wait, but those people are doing that. It became a lot of like picking and choosing from the Bible. And to me, that sounds like what the devil does, right? Like, like when the devil and Jesus have, are going like kind of back and forth, back and forth. Obviously, Jesus knew the Bible as good, if not better. And so for someone like me, I grew up thinking like, okay, I might be noticing these things. A lot of these things seem really weird. It seems kind of like a talent show whenever we're here, but this is still my church, right? Like God's God. I need to trust that God put me here. God has me here for a reason. And I don't know how many weird and this weird facial reactions I would get, but I started noticing it as I was like in my 20s. They would ask like, "Oh, what church are you from?" or like, "What church do you go to?" And I would say Calvary Chapel, and a decent amount of people knew what it was. And for those who didn't, I would just explain. And I'd be like, "We're non-denominational, but we do have a Bible, so it is denomination. It's just we don't abide by the other things." And then if I was like explaining to someone who was Catholic, like I still think Catholicism is a cult, but like it's not culty in the same way as Calvary Chapel is. And again, you don't know these things until you get out and you start asking enough questions. And when you start making like an uproar, and like I even did social media for a dispensary here, and I would get like a lot of people coming in. They'd be like, "Please don't tell the pastor that you saw me here." And I'm like, "Why am I gonna put you on blast?" Like first off, that's probably not even good protocol for cannabis. But two, like I'm not like do you think I'm that type of person? But what I've learned is that it Calvary Chapel runs a little bit like Scientology, where they don't have their audits, but they have, and I don't think Calvary Chapel is completely unique in this, but they have their prayer chains. And I used to think that these prayer chains were good, but I've since realized, and I've even talked to my mother about this, and in a way of like, can I get through to you? But like the prayer chains that they have now are more just like gossip circles. It's like and as I realized this, I looked back and I thought, you know what? There were a lot of times at church when they'd be like, "Oh, Caleb, have you heard of, or have you, I don't know, let me just say Ashley. Have you seen Ashley? She really needs Jesus." Or, or did you hear about Brian on the prayer team? Yeah, he really needs Jesus. And so, yeah, those types of things were like, when I first hear it, I'm like, oh wow, they need Jesus. But then I realized I'm like, well, these people are just gossiping and they're using prayer as their excuse to gossip. And I don't know if anybody has ever told you that or if you've heard of that in the Calvary Chapel community, but it's and that's what I'm saying. Like they can't be the only ones doing that, but I know that that was really prevalent. Like my mom gets like maybe daily text messages of like who to pray for, and I know that there are some people in there where it's like, okay, I'm sure this is I don't know, maybe a single mother who has kids or who might need extra prayer. Like I know that there are definitely those in there, but what doesn't make sense to me is like I know someone personally who one of like a good friend of mine, I met her after her family left Calvary Chapel. And I remember she was very polite asking if I still go there and what I thought about it. But what she told me was my father sexually assaulted me. And when we told the pastor there, he was like, well, he didn't cheat on you. Like he didn't cheat on the mom, basically. Like if you didn't cheat, then you got to stay married. And the mom was like, what? He just sexually assaulted my daughter, and you want me to be okay with that? Like from a different standpoint, I was thinking, well, isn't that technically cheating? Like if I mean, it's first of all disgusting, but to do that with your daughter, and then the church saying like, well, he's not beating you, he's not cheating on you, like stay together. And because of that, the mom like immediately like divorced and peaced out of the church. And I don't blame her because if I had a child and I came up with something like that and they're like, well, that's not really against any rules in the Bible, so you should stay together. Like that's kind of the picking and choosing that I alluded to earlier, where I found that they were very much doing that to me. And when I would try using the Bible back, like, well, what about all these gluttonous people or whatever, whatever example I was giving, then I was met with stop being like a disruption, stop being combative. It's I'm over it. Like there's so much that I could say, but I'm so over it that I don't even like it's good for me to dig this up and talk about it, but I just I want to tear down, every Calvary Chapel sign I see. I've tried discussing with my parents, like, okay, that people who are in a cult or people who were in a cult, they're more likely to be in a cult again. Like I got them to understand that, and I'm like, do you think that you could have left the cult and then joined another one? And then of course that's when they get angry. But I must bring up my family's feedback because I grew up hearing as a child that my mom would say, "Oh, Mijo, your like my aunts and uncles, my tias and tios." She would be like, "Oh yeah, your tias and tios, stop that. We were gonna sell our house and join this cult, and they would never see us again when they left and officially became part of Calvary Chapel." And so it wasn't even my like elder thoughts. It was me as a child hearing my mother say that, and then always having in the back of the head, why did my external family think that Calvary is a cult? Right. So like I've had a lot of those types of thoughts constantly. Like, I file them away and I'm like, okay, it sounds a little ridiculous right now, but after enough times of filing those instances away, I'm like, wait, something is off here. And I think it only seems normal because I grew up in it.
Exactly. It was normalized for you. It was something that you didn't know any different. You were so young whenever you were part of the other cult. And even that was normalized, and your parents recognized that that was a cult. And then they moved you into something similar. It might have had a different look, a different name, but whenever that's all that like you said, you can't see it through a different lens until you're separated from it and you can experience something else and say, wait, this seems normal, and that didn't. And even how you're talking about how they used prayer, they're using prayer to sort of mitigate and use it as a way to gossip about people who maybe they have a problem with, instead of actually bringing people together to pray for people who may actually need it. Like you said, the single mom or the struggling person or the person with a disease or the person having a hard time with their spouse, they're praying over people gossiping instead of, and then training you and other kids to think that that's what prayer is for, instead of, we have to pray for people's health, and we have to pray in these ways that can help elevate a person and get them better from whatever it is they're struggling from, instead of almost using it as a mockery for gossip. So you see how these really simple things are like used as weapons instead of as methods of healing or holiness, or ways that they are promoted as in the public.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The only thing I can do now is share this, because I'm not gonna go, I don't know, what's the term, homicidal. Like, I'm not gonna do anything crazy. I know that what I've already said seems crazy enough to other people, but the fact that I've heard other people's Calvary Chapel testimonies, I've read them online, whether it was forums or seen some on YouTube, and for me, I've taken a lot of work on myself, where I realized, okay, I can't control what else is happening, but I can control my reaction, right? Like, I can control how I now tell this story, how I now present myself, because I was telling everybody else their story. I was producing, I was doing all these different things, and I was kind of ignoring the thought at the back of my head of, what's this kind of Calvary Chapel monster hunching over me? Because it's really how I felt. Like, it's just, it makes a lot of sense now that I look back at it, and I think, oh, that's why I got all those weird facial reactions. That's why people were probably like, oh, this kid doesn't realize he's in a hole. and like, that partially makes me feel stupid, but I know I'm not stupid, because, like you said, it was normalized. What we think is normal is never normal.
Exactly. And even abuse, when it happens in a place that is supposed to, like I said, be holy, it's supposed to be a place of healing. The leaders there are supposed to be people that are helping the communities and serving the public. When abuse occurs there, it's like teaching a child that this is love, this is healing, this is what you do whenever you're a kid with adults or with whoever it is that is the abuse, wherever the abuse is coming from. And so then the child gets so confused with associating love and care and support with abuse, and so that becomes normalized too. It's very twisted and inverted how it works in a lot of these cult systems.
Well, and another example would be, like, I grew up, not only was I born and raised in Calvary Chapel, but, like, I was born and raised with a housekeeper, and this wasn't some, like, fancy maid service. So this specific example with my housekeeper, he was from Mexico. Her son was not a citizen here either, yet they went to school with us. They went to church. And she usually went home on the weekend to give her money to her family, but then would come back. And um, there's something right and there's something wrong with that. There's something right because my parents were helping a woman whose husband was abusive, and they were living here. But obviously, in terms of, like, technical dynamics, like, the son shouldn't have been going to school here. She shouldn't have been living here for, like, Monday through Friday, sometimes on the weekends too. And when someone's considered, like, an illegal, I guess that's whether they're here illegally or they're an illegal, right? That's kind of the term that's categorized with those people. And the reason why it was wrong, especially in my situation, was, although I'm glad I had a female figure, because my mom didn't want just a bunch of babysitters, one after the other. She wanted someone consistent and always there. What made it profoundly confusing for someone like me, and this might not be an exact Calvary Chapel problem, but I know people in the church were aware of this. They knew who she was. A lot of the people kind of had that, because the Calvary Chapel down here is a lot of law enforcement and kind of business owners. So they like that's a whole other topic, but that kind of explains why they kind of run the valley in a way. But growing up, I could not tell my friends or anybody that we had a housekeeper. I couldn't like I had to pretend like she didn't exist. So you're having what made it very confusing was I had my parents, saying be the perfect Christian, but at the same time, you can't tell anybody about her. You have to lie about her constantly. You have to like it very much was like probably fracturing my brain, and it may not have been exactly the way heard with some of your survivors where they had to do extremely horrendous things as children. But for whether they did that or me, you're fracturing a child's brain when you start to do those types of things. You tell them that this is the way one world is and this is the way the other world is, and now you have to keep track of those worlds. So I had a lot of that. I had a lot of um, the Christianese that people can kind of describe as, and I just had a lot in of how can I say this? I had a lot of consistent inconsistency, right? Like inconsistent, like things that are incongruent kept happening. And for me, it really culminated these last like pretty much this last decade, but the last 5 or so years, I just could not hold it in anymore that and like that this is normal. Like when I would get pushback from the head pastor because basically all the way all Calvary Chapel's work is they have their like Pope, right? Their Pope Chuck Smith, and he just died. And so there's a lot of confusion right now in the Calvary Chapel community because people are like, well, then who do we abide by? Because all of our documentation basically says he's supposed to be the person that we abide by. So you have Calvary Chapels right now that are like sticking together, that are stronger than ever. And then you have other ones that are just kind of slipping away and falling away because they don't have that overarching kind of a pope, right? Like they're poking away. And I know that right here in our community, our pastor is going to be there for like, he's coming up on 50 years. So they have, the way they have it is it's like, we have our leader and he's our only leader. And when I've heard other Christian people refer to the Bible about something, the way Calvary Chapel works is we'll say, oh, Pastor Pete said this or Pastor said that. And of course, it's okay to reference your pastor, right? But normally your pastor should just be quoting from the Bible, right? Like, isn't that expected at least? And so as I got older, I realized like, why do I keep saying Pastor Pete or Pastor said this or Pastor said that? And something as small as that, you realize like it goes way back, right? It goes in when I was like 2 or 3 years old, and I kept hearing them say pastor, pastor, and if we ever had a question, oh, pastor knows, oh, pastor knows, and so it creates this Trinity effect, this Holy Trinity effect of like it's like kind of God and the Holy Spirit, Jesus, and then your pastor. That's kind of how I have viewed it. And when I went to other Calvary chapels, like when I moved to Arizona or even when I lived in New York City, there was it was called Harvest New York, but it was affiliated with Calvary Chapel. And I remember when I first went to that one, they looked at me like, what are you doing here? But very much they were like, oh, here's another one. Like here's one we can play with or whatever. That's the impression that I got. And I remember I took an ex-girlfriend there, and then they looked even more at us like, ooh, what can we do with you? And that stuck in my mind. But of course, I'm like, I'm trying to be loyal. I'm trying to be loyal to Calvary Chapel. And every time I would see or hear something like that and then think something like that, I would go, no, Caleb, but that's not it. That's, they're just excited you're here. And there's so like I don't know, please ask me questions because I can just keep talking and talking, or we can go through some of the photos because I know Calvary Chapel in and out, and I know that my mom and dad probably got suckered in when she had a miscarriage. And I know that that can't be easy for any woman, right? But not only are you dealing with a lot, you're vulnerable. So I
Yes.
think what my mom got during that vulnerability was, oh, the kind of like, because Catholicism doesn't really operate like a McDonald's, where like Calvary Chapel does. I hope that makes sense. They kind of give you, the good bits. They make you feel nice, and then they send you home. Whereas Catholicism is more like, yeah, you might confess, you might, go up and get the bread, but otherwise, it's just kind of like there's no roller coaster of emotion, right? Whereas with Calvary Chapel, it's like they've got it so down. They start the worship, they get it into, and that was something they even started to train me to do, where like during the prayer call, they like to turn the music up so that it's very like the ambiance is created. It's kind of like it is. It's like it's a soundtrack. They know what they're doing. They got it very much down. And I remember one time they told me, they're like, "Oh, you needed to raise the music higher. That's why nobody raised their hand for prayer. Like it was too quiet." Like just weird things like that I think back and laugh, and I'm like, or it's just weird that we're doing this in the first place. But anyway, like they've got their formula down so good that I really do compare it to like McDonald's, because every time you go to McDonald's, right, it's gonna taste the same, whether you're in Canada, right, like here or Mexico, they're all pretty much gonna taste the same. And Calvary Chapel has been run like that. They started on the beaches of Southern California, so they have that kind of feel good story, and then all of a sudden they exploded. And like one of the screenshots that we can bring up later that has Skip's book, I grew up having a lot of these books and audio CDs, and I remember looking at the prices, like they weren't cheap. They were like 40, 50, $60 for these like multiple disc sets, like tape sets, because they were still tapes back then, and like all these different things where it's like like I understand there are other methods of consuming religious content, right? But when you're charging these people, to me, that's kind of like what Jesus hated when he went in and flipped all the tables. He was like, "You guys turn this into a marketplace." And I remember one time I was, they asked me to photograph an event, the church, and so I said, "Oh, sure, of course, like I'll do this and I'll just donate, my services. It's fine." And their whole auditorium was filled with people like with their little local business things, whether they're just reselling it or they have like their little artisan stuff. And at first I thought, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, but where's the Jesus in it, or at least like the gospel? And I remember asking the pastor's wife, I was like, is this okay that we're doing this? Isn't this like what Jesus didn't want? He didn't want us like doing business at church, like having a marketplace. And she was like, well, we're all just here supporting each other, so that's just really what counts. And I understand, right? Like we can support each other, but do we need to fill up our entire church with your businesses? Like there's, I don't know how you feel about that, but for me, that's just I never left that day feeling like this is okay. That was like another check mark on things to be wary of, because again, like I don't know how you feel about the Catholic Church, but I understand that Catholicism is like the world's biggest cult. But what we have to remember is like there are people, because the whole point of Calvary Chapel was, we're not fancy like Catholicism. We wear jeans, we wear button downs. The the whole thing they're selling is like, we're the relaxed Christian. Like, be yourself with us. But then they're like, once you get in, the best way I can describe it is like, once you get in and the more involved you get, the less control of yourself you have.
Yes.
And someone
Yeah.
like me, like I've served a lot in a lot of different facets, but the one thing I hate and I can never stand for is being limited.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so many good points that you brought up that I have questions about, and I think we can do a dig in. But
Go
one
for
thing
it.
I
Go
wanted to
for it.
ask about before is if you could give a little bit of background about when Calvary came about, and even if you could explain like how big it's gotten, like some of the locations or what states it's in, versus where it started, so people can understand. Maybe not every single location has 15,000 members, but it still
Mhm.
operates in itself as a mega church cult.
Oh yeah, yeah. The system, absolutely. It's not even just in the Americas. It's gone all over the world. They've I know some of the people from here at our church went to Georgia, like by Russia, and so they'll go everywhere. And like I was even used for you could say I volunteered, but I was kind of pressured to go to this Ensenada trip in Mexico and help build a church. And like, I didn't realize I was going to be doing like construction while I was down there. It's, excuse me. It was a good experience. Like I said, I volunteered, but pretty much I was like thrown with a group of kids that were there like, you all have issues. We need to fix you. And so in the same way that like Scientology has their like Sea Org members, right? Like they have that. Calvary Chapel doesn't have like Sea Org, but they have a very established system where it seems like Southern California is the headquarters. And then once you're established in this area and they figure, okay, he'll do what we want, then they say, we're going to promote you and you're going to start your own church in Ensenada, but we need you to build it. And so they do that. They'll be like, okay, we see that Russia has some issues going on, right? So we're gonna send you where you're getting a promotion, you're going over there. And I don't want to say that I was trafficked because I wasn't sent overseas or anything like that. I can't claim that, but I know that I was taken advantage of. And if I was, there are definitely other people because I was in no shape to be like I have epilepsy, so I've dislocated my shoulders. I still try to take as good care of my body as I can, but they were having me do like that type of stuff, like hammering things, and they were like, you're not doing it the right way. Like the youth pastor there that was kind of in charge of everybody, he's like, you're not doing it the right way. Let me show you again. And so then I can't actually like have full rotation of my shoulder just because of my injury. So little things like that as well, where I'm like, you realize like, what I'm dealing with, right? Like they did let me sleep in because they're like, we don't want you having a seizure, but it was I like that's the type of trafficking I personally witnessed and was a part of. And I know that what they're doing is they're making these people feel like the second coming or whatever they need to in order to get those families to actually move. And it's hard because when this church officially went up here in El Centro, there was like this schism that happened because Calvary Chapel was like, we're not going to take any loans, we're not going to do anything of the world in that way. But then they were like, never mind, just kidding. We're having, we're signing a loan, and because of that, like half the church down here split up and like went and started a separate one. So the reason I bring that up is because someone else who I know, I could recommend for the podcast, she was part of a different series of churches here in the valley, and she personally said that she was doing like she was some might call it babysitting, but she was helping take care of kids when she was like, I don't know, not even a teenager. So for her, that's considered like she personally considers that child abuse. Like I know my sister knew how to change my diaper and she's only a year and a half older than me. So like if my sister was changing my diaper at 3 years old, like to me I used to think that's cute. But now I realize like, wait, I think they train women down here to kind of be the caretaker, which is obviously okay if that's what a woman wants to do. But when you start putting people in these specific roles, and then I'm hearing those stories and also experiencing it, I'm like, wait, you're onto something. And that same one who told me of her trafficking and seeing it, she was like, I think that now this is going to be a claim what I'm about to say that might not be true, but there's a lot of evidence to support it that Calvary Chapel, First Christian, and Christ Community, those are like the big three Christian churches here in the Imperial Valley. And it was like, I know they have something going on with trafficking because I saw it myself in the other two. She was never part of Calvary Chapel, but she was involved in a lot of, I mean, she was part of like a radio station down here that was owned and operated by like a different Christian group. So she was involved in a lot and heard a lot. And when she told me, I don't know, maybe like 4 years ago, that there was whole activity going on, and I think she was kind of like trying to give me like a, like a LinkedIn type of thing, and I think she was trying to see where my head was at as well, and I kept that at the back of my head, like I do with a lot of other things, and I knew like, okay, if she's saying this, but hasn't like publicly come out and said like in like the way that I'm doing now, she may not want to, but she's obviously telling me like these things because she thinks it needs to be said. And I started to hear a lot of that, like even when I was there in Arizona, and I brought up like, oh yeah, I used to go to Calvary Chapels, and there's one right down the road, and I remember going to that one and getting like it. It was bigger than ours. It was nicer, but there was still something so off about it. Like I was expecting to walk in and be welcomed because I'm like, oh, this is the Calvary Chapel, of course. And then as soon as I walked in, they were like I went into the auditorium, and then they told me, oh, you can't sit here because you have a backpack, but we can hold your backpack for you. And I thought, oh, that's kind of strange. Like, I don't, I don't know. Maybe this is just their role. They're trying to prevent like explosives or something. But when I would share over there in Arizona, like, oh yeah, like pretty much this last year, when I officially like put my foot down, when I would share like, oh yeah, there are cults, like, and we have to be careful. I had a good receptive response, but the farthest I've ever gotten with my parents is just, well, your fraternity is a cult, and I'm like, well, yeah, technically it is. Like when I joined the fraternity in college, like I guess technically, that is a cult. You're right. Um, but it's only like they're still not willing to admit that what describes the cult also describes Calvary Chapel. Like, there's
Yes.
only one chain of command, right? Like there's us and them type of grouping. There's like even when I looked up and showed my parents, I'm like, you realize that clergymen are in the top 10 psychopathic careers. And they're like, well, why? And I explained to them, well, because what does a clergyman do as the pastor of the church? It's like all about him and what he says goes. And everybody kind of lifts him up on this inhuman pedestal, right? Like on this holy pedestal. And don't you think that someone like our pastor, Pastor P, doesn't he, like, how they say psychopaths have like not only are they charismatic for those charismatic leaders, but it's like they make you feel like they're the only person in the whole world, and they have that like he does that. His wife has the love bombing. It's
Yes.
just like I always felt like something was so weird when I would talk with them, but again, I was just trying to be respectful, right? This was normalized for me, and I had to go through a lot of uncomfortableness to realize, okay, Caleb, you're not misreading things. You're not seeing these things. Because if you're only seeing one occurrence, okay, that's fine. If only one person told you, then okay, that might be a little questionable. But the fact that people keep coming to you, and I think because I started to speak out more and more and more, I had other people saying like, oh, please, don't tell the pastor on me, or, like, we like to
Oh,
drink, like our family likes to drink, and it's just like, okay, that's fine, but why are you confessing that to me? Like, 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 I thought that a lot of people were living this, I understand because of my autism as well. I understand I can be a bit aloof, and I didn't know I was autistic until a couple of years ago, and I don't want to blame my parents because of that, but I kind of have to because of Calvary. There was documentation that, like, I was walking on my tiptoes instead of, like when you're like, that's a sign of autism. Also, like, I wasn't responding correctly. Like, if, like, they wrote in my baby diary that, like, my sister stepped on my stomach and I was laughing. So, like, yeah, they're like all kinds of things. And so, instead of taking me to get seen by a specialist or anything like that, my parents' answer was just to pray, right? And prayer is great, obviously, but when you aren't, when you're, I don't even know how to say this. I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at. But, like, when you when you have a child, you're supposed to do everything you can, right? And, like, you're supposed to obviously pray for them, but not make prayer the only thing.
it's
I hope
like
that
a
comes.
it's like a method of control. Like they want you to rely solely on them. Everything else doesn't matter. If you have a problem, if your child has a problem, we're going to take care of it. We're going to pray over it. You don't need the doctors. You need us, 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 us. You don't need them. It's like a way to compartmentalize control by making everything inside the church. You have to take care of the problem here. You can take care of it here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It makes you like gaslight yourself. Oh, well, let's just pray over the child. You're right. I don't need to go to the doctor. The prayer here is so powerful. It's going to heal my child. It's a method of control. It makes you solely rely on them instead of doing the healthy thing of creating a community of all different types of people that you can lean on. They make you go just to the people that are in the church.
Mm-hmm. And there was even this one doctor that a lot of the ladies in the church knew, and even my mom knows. And interestingly enough, all those women also had, like, opioid prescriptions. Like, they had debilitating issues, but I also don't know what came first. The lack of care for the body, or the opiate prescription. And he was like the one that all the women in that church community were going to. So, again, that's like, I don't have direct evidence of that because I wasn't going there. But the fact that, like, one of my mom's close friends shared that with me one time, and she was probably, like, high on her tramadol or whatever it is. And, like, things like that are also where I'm like, okay, it's the control method that you talked about, but if they can get away with it, they're going to get away with it. And it's just, I know that that's not only a Calvary Chapel issue. I know that there are doctors everywhere, writing prescriptions that they probably shouldn't be. But the fact that, like, all these old ladies at the church knew of this one doctor that they could go to and get anything. That's why I say, like, the Calvary Chapel here, at least, I don't know how, like, the bigger ones are, but I know the one here because it's like an impoverished community. They're all the Calvary Chapel people there are, like, the business owners or law enforcement people. And that's pretty much, like, when you're involved in that, you kind of have the ability to run an area.
Absolutely. And if I could too, I want to confirm and validate what you were talking about with witnessing human trafficking. I'm going to read the definition of what human trafficking is. It's also known as trafficking in persons, and it's a crime that involves compelling or coercing a person to provide labor or services or to engage in commercial sex acts. The coercion can be subtle or overt, physical or psychological. Exploitation of a minor for commercial sex is human trafficking, regardless of whether any form of force, fraud, or coercion is used. So you're explaining human trafficking, labor trafficking, that was used and had a nice label on it. Hey, you're doing good. You're going to help build us a church and you're going to be proud of it. And you're lucky you get to do this. You're chosen. You get to go do all this hard labor. We don't even need to hire anybody. We have you. You know, I had an interview on here with a guy named Cash Colligan, who was in the music industry growing up and had a band and got a little bit of, you know, fame and notoriety with a band that he had, and realized that, you know, he wasn't being paid for what he was doing. Even though he was working his butt off, they weren't paying him. And he talks about that. That was labor trafficking. Even though it looks good, he was in public. There wasn't force or people, you know, that were chaining him down and forcing him to do stuff. He was on stage on his own volition. He wasn't getting compensated for what he was doing, but it was dressed up as, you get famous, you get to be a musician, you know. And so he talks about that a lot and says how, I think I have a quote by him. He said recently on social media, he had this post that said, "You're so weird." And then he goes, "Thanks. I was labor trafficked as a child by celebrities and they called it being a musician." And so you see how, like, trafficking, it doesn't have to be this thing that we see in movies where it's a matter of force, somebody jumping out of an alley, kidnapping you, chaining you up, and forcing you to do labor or sex. This can be coercion. Somebody saying to you, you know, "Wow, you're so lucky. Look, we're going to offer you the opportunity. Even though you're sick, you have epilepsy, this is not good for your health. You're so lucky that you get to serve God and do this church, build this church for us," you know? And when they already have all those methods of control, they've already manipulated you since you were a child. They've groomed you. They've made you idolize them and worship them and obey them. Nobody's going to say no to that. You don't do that. If you do, then you're going to be an outcast in the church. You're all of a sudden going to be the one being texted to everybody, "You guys got to pray for Caleb. He's lost his way and he said no to this opportunity of this, you know, building this new church for us," you know? So it's like they make you gaslight yourself, and then they'll outcast anybody that tries to go against the grain. And so you don't, like, you say yes to everything. And you don't realize till in hindsight that, like, wait, that wasn't right. You know, like, I wasn't in the, like, I shouldn't have been doing that, period. Like, my health problems, and, like, I'm not a construction person. They should have hired somebody to, like, do this, you know? And so you realize, like, these things, like, they hide in plain sight, and it's really easy to gaslight yourself, because human trafficking and these different crimes against humanity, it doesn't always look like the forceful, violent ways that it does in movies that Hollywood portrays it as. It's very subtle most of the time. In fact, a lot of the guests on my podcast that were trafficked still went to school every day. They didn't walk around with chains. No. You know, they were going to school, they were participating in society, playing sports, and then at night they're being trafficked, and they weren't, you know, fighting it and running away, you know, even though I'm sure they wanted to. It's just normalized for them. They had to say yes. They were groomed to say yes. And if they didn't, they were punished. You know, and so it just, like, it's another method of control. So I just wanted to share that, because even though I know you're not on here making allegations of, like, "Oh my gosh, I was human trafficked and I saw this," this is something that you're observing and sharing. It shows how these different things can look. You know, it's not how it looks in movies. And I do believe that that is a form of human trafficking, what you went through. I think that that's labor trafficking, you know, and they dressed it up as making you feel good about it and lucky, and they didn't really give you an opportunity to say no, because they wanted you to climb the ranks. They were grooming you to look at it like an opportunity instead of a crime.
Thank you for reading that, because yeah, you're right. Reading that, I can't argue at all. They didn't tell me, "Hey, you're gonna come over here and do holding, you know, like, wheelbarrows and all this stuff." Like, they were just like, "Oh, we have a great mission opportunity for you."
Yes.
And we think you'd be great for it. We're going over spring break. You know, it was a lot of, yeah, it was a lot of, yep.
And so you do it not realizing, like, because you feel good. You're like, "Yes, let's go. Like, I'm so honored," you know, but that is how they get, that's the best way of quote unquote human trafficking, is when you can get somebody that's not fighting you, that you don't have to put in chains. And they do that through consistent grooming, manipulation, love bombing, you know, all the ways to make somebody obey and to almost fear saying no, because you want to shine, like, you want to look good. You know, you've devoted your whole life to this church. Why would you say no? Even while you're there, why would you say no when you're like, "Wait, I wasn't expecting this, but they look at me like a leader and they gave me this opportunity. Like, I have to do this. You know, I'm already here. Like, I'm going to do it." And it's exploitation. It's human exploitation. And that doesn't, like I said, it doesn't look like the person wearing black jumping out of the alleyway. This is coercion, and it's love bombing, and it's all the psychopathic things, that people do in order to control somebody.
And I know that my parents aren't stupid. I think what my parents are just like, they both had alcoholic fathers. They grew up extremely poor. My mom worked in the field. My dad did too, but not as much as my mom. And so I know, like, my parents have done a lot. They're ignorant, and they are okay remaining ignorant. And part of me thinks, like, what kind of devil contract did they sign where they just they're stuck here where they were born and raised? But also I think, like, they've tithed a lot to that church, and they probably see it as like, this is here because of us. So we're, this is part of us. And thank God I don't have that anymore. I'm not connected to that. But I know who I am, but these last couple of years have been me really, really figuring out, okay, Caleb, what are you going to present to the world? Because you told, you did plenty of Calvary Chapel work where you're only talking about Calvary Chapel, or even in the news, you're talking about other people, or whether it was musical theater, I was being a character. But now the time where I'm like, okay, I don't need to do what my parents raised me. I can respectfully decline. I can move forward. And part of that moving forward is talking about this, because these are thoughts that I've had in my head, or that I've shared with a person here and there, but never all together like this. So it is a lot. And pardon if it's I really am jumping in tangents, but
you're doing great.
Thank you. As soon as I have something that comes to mind, I'm like, wait, let me shoot that in there.
No, you're doing amazing. And this is a big topic. Like, you're talking about a specific church that you belong to, but we're talking, we've been talking since we've met each other, and right before we were recording, just about cults proliferate everywhere. Like, this same model, you can take the model that they used in Calvary, and it's duplicated in personal development. It's duplicated in things like nonprofits. There's all kinds of ways that, like, cult behavior, Freemasons, it proliferates in these different aspects of society, but it's right in front of us. So the people that are walking by and driving by these different establishments or churches or Masonic lodges, it's just part of their community. There can't be anything bad happening there. Like, I'm literally looking at it, it's in plain sight. Bad things hide in the alleys, they hide in the dark. This is right in front of me, and it's public. But that's exactly where the best cults hide, it is in plain sight, because that's the allure of it. And then just how you were saying with your mother having a miscarriage, they feast on vulnerabilities. So a person goes to church vulnerable, harmed, hurt, recovering, suffering, looking for refuge, looking for people who will care for them, looking for the Holy Spirit to heal. And they're met with people with psychopathic tendencies that say, oh, there's one we can prey on. They're weak right now. I'm catching them in a weak moment. I'm going to take advantage of them and exploit them. And they're going to be really easy because they're already coming in here wanting refuge and healing. And I'm going to give them that magic pill, but it's not going to come from where they want it to come from. It's not going to come from the Holy Spirit. It's going to come from mind control and abuse and manipulation. And they're going to feed right into it because they're vulnerable. And so vulnerability is like a huge thing. And then they'll create it right from the beginning. Like, for you as a child, they create it. They create your vulnerabilities. You weren't born vulnerable. Well, you are because you're a child, but, like, children are born very resilient, and they take careful measures to, like, break down that resilience, to create obedience, to create a child that is made to be outcasted if he asks questions like you always did. And I love that about you, that you were, like, rebellious and always questioned, like, well, why are we doing this? And why are we doing that? Yeah. But that's what they don't want. And they make you feel weird if you do that. So you learn to sort of, like, okay, I can't ask questions because I'm the only one. So that must mean that I'm weird. Like, I'm the bad kid if I'm asking questions. So I'm just not going to ask them anymore. And so from a really early age, it's like they're instilling this obedience and control, and you can only listen to us. Don't ask questions. Like they're not relevant here. Like they don't matter. And the answer to it, is what we tell you it is. It's not what you're speculating. And so it's like you lose your agency to your own soul, to your heart, to your free thought.
Yeah.
They want to have and be able to pull the strings of that. And they do that through people that are already vulnerable, or by creating vulnerability in, fresh minds and small kids.
And part of, I had two things I wanted to say. Your words made me think of Abercrombie, because I worked there in college, and I never thought about it as a cult until after. But I realized, especially when Mike Drexler was the CEO, and he was basically saying like, we're an exclusive brand, is our brand, is our, basically he was doing everything politically incorrect, but he was obviously having a ton of success. And I remember we didn't have an Abercrombie down here. We only had a Hollister, but I remember still thinking, because they used to like cover up the walls, right? And they would have like basically it shuttered so that it kind of looked like a club inside. And when I was recruited to work at Abercrombie in college, I think I was a perfect candidate, because I think I probably didn't walk with my head held high as much as I do now. And also, like what we've said, if you have been in a cult, you're more likely to be in another cult, right? And I know Abercrombie and Fitch is a clothing brand, but they very much, like the fashion industry, I know from working in it, the fashion industry is like a cult. And the way Abercrombie was running was, there's people who are skinny enough to fit into our clothes, and there are people who aren't. And and those people, we hate you, right? Like it was that type of mentality. And I remember even coming in, like going in my freshman year and working there all throughout college, like we would get mad when the Asians would mess up the clothes, because then we had to fix it, which is so stupid, right? Like, but I didn't walk in having that attitude. I walked in being something they could mold. And that's basically what you're saying with Calvary is, and you're right. Like I didn't think about that, because again, I'm being normalized in this, and it's just I'm growing up exactly in this. But Abercrombie, and even not just Abercrombie, I think Penn State's a bit of a cult. I've said that in the past, and I'll say that again, only because when I got to Penn State, it was when the whole Dusty scandal happened. I don't know if you're familiar with.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was my
I'm from Pennsylvania, so that was like a big thing where,
okay,
yeah.
Everybody knew about that, right? And at least in Pennsylvania, and probably on that whole East Coast area, like
Totally
everybody, right? Like everybody knew that. And I remember thinking, like, wait, this man saw a little boy getting touched, told who he was supposed to, but didn't tell the police. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't know if I'm okay with that. But still being there in my freshman year, and everybody was like, "Go, Pa, we love you." And I get it, because it was multi-generational at that point. Like Penn State has like third generation, sometimes fourth generation Penn Staters. I don't think I ever met a fourth generation, but I met a lot of third generation Penn Staters. And when you do that, it becomes generational, right? It becomes a cult. Like that's really what it becomes. So for a while, I was kind of going from cult to cult to cult, and I understand, because like when your entire personality has been erased, plus like I didn't know I was autistic, so what I found out recently was I was basically masking. I was using what I learned in musical theater all those years and just kind of adapting to wherever I was put, which I don't know if that's like a survival mechanism, but really it's just right. It's what I had to do. But understanding that like the cult could be the church that you're going to, the cult could also be the athletic group that you're a part of. Like, I don't want people to all of a sudden start like, pointing fingers everywhere, but right. But like the cult is probably what you don't think it is.
100% 1,000,000%. You're so right about that. And that's why this topic is so important, because it surrounds us. Like, cults have grown to such an enormous level, even hiding in places like companies, hiding in fraternities and colleges. And they're all dressed up as glitz and glamour. It's of course there's underground cults, of course, but they've moved mainstream, and they've been able to do it so effortlessly because they're so good at manipulating and coercing and coming off as being charming, and they put all the right people in place to say all the right things, and they look exactly how we look at a professional to look. They're wearing suits and ties or jeans and t-shirts, and they're personable, they're approachable, but it's the intention behind what they're doing that is evil. But unless you know what to look for, it goes right over your head, because it doesn't sound coercive and manipulative and violent and evil. Like, they say all the right things. And so it's so important that we talk about this, because they're looking for the vulnerabilities. Like, cults are always like trying to leech onto all of us everywhere. And a lot of us are like, well, I'm not a victim. Like, I work, I'm strong, like, I'm good. I grew up in a healthy family. Like, I'm not ever going to be in a cult. But it's like, oh yeah, because if you have one little vulnerability in your life, if you have a miscarriage, which happens to many women, and you're down, and that's where you go is to seek refuge, is a church. Like, you just became a victim, and unless you know that you just became one, you are going to continue to be one, unless you have the discernment to understand what you're walking into, and if the person in front of you, what their intention is for you. And so it's just so it's insidious. And then these cases, and if it's okay with you, I think it would be great to talk about some of this amazing slideshow that you put together. But the other thing, like, so much of this abuse sometimes can be publicized, but it's like they'll put out one little blurb and then it just gets covered up. And unless you're taking a screenshot of it, like, nobody knows about it. But they're like, well, we published it, we did our job, like, it's fine, just forget about it. But it's like, this just flies under the radar, and the slideshow that you have is proof of that. And I thought maybe we could go through that. Okay, I'm going to bring this up, and then we can go through it at your pace. Just tell me when to move the slide to the next one. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so this one was one that, like, I like, if you Google Calvary Chapel, right, you're only going to get their recent stuff, because they've been doing a lot of recent, like, whether it's their live streams, whatever it is. Since there's so many different Calvary Chapels, all those results pop up first. However, in order to get this, all you got to do is change your date range from, like, I think I put like 1970 to like 2010 maybe, or maybe even 2005. And that's how I stumbled upon this. And I'm like, oh, no wonder they want to cover something like this up.
100%. And were most of these, and this is in California, have most of the cases that you researched, were they in California, or have you found cases of this all around the world, these same type of sexual abuse and abuse allegations that made the news?
Most of them, I believe, are in California. Yeah. And it makes sense, because it started along the coast right here. Yeah, there are times in the LA, Orange area. And then they just kind of, like, it was like reverse manifest destiny. They started moving eastward.
And this should be really eye-opening for people too, because again, these are people in positions of power that a lot of times we put there, because they continue to abuse and we don't stop them, and they end up becoming things like Bible teachers. This heading, for people listening and not watching, Bible teacher jailed in underage sex case. And then it says a Bible teacher at Calvary Chapel has been arrested on suspicion of having sex with a pastor's teenage daughter. And so this is a Bible teacher. You think about all the access to children that this person has, and probably how respected he was, to where parents didn't even question their kids and, teenagers being maybe alone with him, for this Bible teaching that he did. So I'll go to the next one.
Oh yeah, and that one's a New York Times one, right? I think.
Yeah, Los Angeles Times.
Yeah, the LA Times. Yeah, Calvary Chapel.
Yeah.
Call on fundamentalist tenant religion, and its does 12,000 people on Sundays and offer a vast outreach program. Yeah, and that was 1990. I wanted everything that we compiled right here. I just kind of wanted like a broad spectrum showing everything. And this one was Pastor Chuck Smith's 25th anniversary. And it even kind of says right there at the beginning, like in the era of fallen televangelists, they're trying to praise him up on a pedestal and make him be like, not like the pastors you see on TV.
And if this was 1990, I mean, we're in 2026 now. So you can just imagine almost 40 years, how big is this now? If back then it was drawing in, over 10,000 people on Sundays.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this one's fun. Oh, yeah. The OC Weekly, A Tale of Two Sinners, the headline. Yeah, this one goes, if you scroll down a bit. Yeah, in Costa Mesa, the Reverend Jim Kempner. So he, like, I don't know all these pastors, but I've heard of them at least once, and especially Chuck Smith. Like I said, he's like the Pope. And I never realized how weird that was until I started to get out of Calvary, that like people don't worship their pastors.
And I love how they called it prostitution investigation when it was probably a human trafficking investigation. It's interesting how they twist words around, but you can kind of read between the lines of what was likely happening.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Okay, yeah. So this is a good example of the books that they sell, like History's Last Chapter, A Study in Revelation. And Skip isn't the only one who has these books. I think he's written the most out of all of them. But again, that was published like before 2000. And my parents have so many of those books, the audio CDs, the tapes, and these books weren't cheap. They would sell them for at least like 30, 40. I know one of the CD sets here in our house, I forget where it is, but the last time I saw it said like $69.99. And I mean, like, that's a lot for CDs when we're supposed to only be depending on the Bible. And that took me a lot of years to like word that way. But once I finally worded it that way, I was like, wait, first of all, we're supposed to be non-denominational, which means we don't have these kind of tenets, yet all of like the head pastors are pushing their books. And we would have these at our church for sale. Obviously, I'm sure they had them online or as the internet was blowing up. But to me, this is like, how can you argue that this isn't what Jesus was flipping over in the synagogue? Like, I don't know what this is if it's not that.
I interviewed a girl that was in the Nexium cult, which was a really big deal in sort of the near past. I feel like it's one of the bigger cult stories that was publicized on, I would say, a global level. I think it went beyond national, but the Nexium cult was a really big deal, and that hid in plain sight too in personal development. And the girl that I interviewed, India Oxenberg, she talked about how this was a big part of their structure. They would have you buy a personal development course, and they'd sort of promote it like, this is the only thing that you need. You need to come here and get this, and you're going to be healed, or you're going to figure out what you want, or you're going to be the success that you want. After they finish that, there's something else that you have to buy. And if you don't, you're outcasted and you're not included, and you can't grow in the organization, and you're sort of gaslit. Like, what do you mean? Like, this helped you so much. Like, imagine what this next course could do, And so they get you to keep buying these things, and then to make you feel bad if you don't. And then this is the things that they sell are this is what they tell you. They're the only things that can help you get from point A to point B. You can go look at everything else in the world, and it's not going to be as good as what we are selling you. And so they make you commit to keep buying and buying and buying and buying. And then you've already come so far, they keep setting the goalpost. And so they're manipulating you into thinking that the only way to play is to pay, and if you don't, you can't grow in the church. And it's another method of control too, because they're making you purchase and learn the things that they want you to, not something that you can go look up online or a course that you can take elsewhere, not something free. Mm-hmm. It has to be what they give you. And so your evidence here and talking about this part, it really validates a lot of other testimonies I've heard of these cults that kind of hide in plain sight, and their methods and their kind of theology for how they get people invested. They literally get you invested through your money in your pockets.
Oh, it's absolutely. You said control and coercion. Absolutely, it's mind-boggling that. Like I'm partially mind-boggled that it took me this long to understand all this, but also, again, you said it perfectly. Like, it was normalized for me. I did not, like, even if I had questioned that, I probably would have gotten some BS answer. like one time for a Wednesday Bible study, I asked a question. It was at the church, but it was maybe only like, I don't know, 30 of us, because it was a Wednesday Bible study and those were smaller. And I raised my hand and I asked, the scripture was how people, they like the recompense of their sin, and how when people abandon the Holy Ghost, or and people are okay being a sinner, or something like that. And I raised my hand and I asked, oh, is that similar to cognitive dissonance? In psychology, there's cognitive dissonance, and I'm sure you know what that is, because this whole world is kind of your territory. But my pastor didn't know what cognitive dissonance was, and I tried briefly explaining it, but his way of answering me was, he just looked back at the Bible and kept reading the verse. Like, he didn't give any personal anecdote. He didn't do anything. He just looked back at the Bible, read the verse, and then looked up, and just looked at me like, you got that? And I was just like, wait, this is really awkward, because there are like other people in this room. Why? But I understood what he was doing. It was don't ask questions. I probably don't know what you're talking about, so I'm just gonna reread what I read. And that's fine for us to be ignorant, right? Like, ignorant isn't a bad word per se. It's when we choose to remain ignorant.
Yes.
That we're not just doing ourselves wrong, we're misleading other people. And if it wasn't, like, I know the whole point of those types of audiobooks and everything was obviously bring people closer to God. But if you didn't have that audiobook, they were like, oh, you didn't get Skip's new book? You didn't get, Pastor Chuck Smith's newest audio CD? Well, I have it. And it became a status thing. It's everything that you said, plus it became a status thing. Like, when people would come over, they would see our Calvary Chapel collection. And we can go back to looking at that, but I got reminded of, yes, the abuse that I received, but something that also lingered in my mind. I remember some of the kids coming over when I was maybe like 8 years old, 7, old enough to remember and to know when things are kind of weird, right? And my mom had us, with some of the other boys from church, like, had us all take a shower together. And so nothing weird happened, but a different time, a friend from school came over, and it was around the same age. But what made it weird was, like, when it was time to take a shower, my mom was like, oh, do you want to take a bath together? And I'm not going to say that it's like Calvary Chapel made my mom think that way, but there was just, like, there were no boundaries.
Yes.
And I know that itself, like, that in itself is considered abuse, when there are, like, no boundaries. And it made me think what was going on when I wasn't there, because I know I'm the youngest, so I did have some privilege in that, but I'm like, if this is what I'm kind of dealing with and, like, looking weird at, like, what did my brother and my sister go through? And I tried talking to them about it. My brother's wife acknowledges that Calvary Chapel is a cult, Like she was like, yeah, the first time I came down and visited the area, I was like, what the heck is this? But she's also she has like committed to Catholicism. Like they like that structure. They like that, that it's like this. They like that. And again, I told them already, like, well, covered, or Catholicism's like the world's biggest cult, or one of the world's biggest cults at least. But I at least respect that she understood when she visited. She was like, this is not right. And even last year when I was kind of coming out of all of this, and I was on the phone with one of my cousins, she was like, yeah, I remember when we went there to the youth group when I was a teenager, and I saw how like the pastor's kids had the nicest clothes, and that didn't make sense to me. It was like, that's not like, how did the pastor's kids have like the nicest sunglasses, like the name brand shirts and everything? So it was like, that never made sense to me. And when she told me that, I was like, you know what, prima, like, or cousin, I was like, you know what, that's a really good point. Like, props to you for understanding that as a child, because I mean, you're a teenager, but you're still a child, and she understood that. And I think what made it, the only reason like some of her family was willing to is because they saw this success that my family started to have. Like my dad was doing well with his job, my mom was getting promoted, we had this big house or whatever. And I think to the rest of my family, since they were super poor, they were like, oh, it must be Calvary Chapel. Calvary Chapel, it must be the reason why they're succeeding. So we did have a lot of family. I remember at one point, like some of the photos that we can bring up, like I think I took a photo of my grandmother being baptized, but like, I know she had no idea what was happening. It was just because some of my aunts were like, oh, let's get some of this Calvary Chapel voodoo, like, let's get into it.
Totally. Yeah, and selling things like this, it's like the control of information. We know that mainstream media, that's what they're masters at, is like
Mm-hmm.
cultivating narratives and then dispersing them to as many people as possible that will listen to it or hear it. And that's what these churches are doing with creating their own literature and selling it. They're controlling the information. It's just another layer of control that's embedded into the cult.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll keep scrolling. Man, we could do like a whole talk just on like one of these topics. It's like they're all so
Right.
important. And so let's talk about this
Right.
one.
Oh yeah, here's an alleged nearly $1 million embezzled from Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills.
Oh my gosh. Talking about selling books and everything. Like, where's this money going
Yeah,
from?
exactly. And then scam hit Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills card.
Another embezzlement. Oh my gosh.
Mm,
Dollar church coffers. Oh. Wolves in sheep's clothing.
yeah, it makes me want to be like a sheep in wolf's clothing just so that I don't get, just so that I look scary. But if they get to know me, they're like, oh, he's just so sweet.
I love that.
And then a court, yeah, set steering and embezzlement. And then
Another
Calvary
one.
Chapel, yeah, Chino Hills. I think
Hundreds of
that's,
thousands of dollars.
yeah, and that's 2010 and updated, yeah, like 5 years later. But these go on and on, and like I don't want this to be the church, that I grew up in, but I can't deny reality either.
100%.
Oh, and then this is like Chuck Smith's like initial rise in the church was, like it was only like there was like less than 30 people on the beaches, it was like there. And who knows if this is even real, but this is just what they tell us. They tell us that it started like John the Baptist, and instead of John the Baptist, we got like this is literally what we've been raised in since I can remember. I knew Chuck Smith's name before I knew the apostle. Oh yeah, and this is in Florida, so as they got to the other side of the country, they couldn't escape it. And last year, funny enough, when I was coming out about all these things and putting stuff online, and one of the pastors from a Calvary Chapel over there in Florida, all of a sudden I saw her looking at my Instagram story, and I was like, people must be talking because because why is this lady from the other side of the country who I have no idea who she is, why is she looking at my story?
No way. Wow. Did you connect with her
Mhm.
at all?
No, I screenshotted it though, so I know I'm not crazy. But what it
Yeah.
was is it showed me that like the Calvary Chapel network was talking, people weren't liking what I was doing, and when I looked on her profile though, like I mean I've done digital marketing for over a decade, so I hate to say it, but like I can read a photo, I can read an Instagram profile, very much so, but a photo, and like even though her profile was private, she had like I don't know, two of the MLMs she was a part of, and then just I'm only gonna say this, for transparency. I'm not trying to gossip, but she literally looked like, and I can tell when someone's smile is fake, like just from being on both sides of the camera, I can tell when someone's genuine. And the fact that she had like a fake ass profile picture, her like multiple MLMs that she's a part of that she's pushing, I was like, this is why Calvary Chapel's falling apart because they I don't know if it's so much as the greed, but like you can't say Calvary Chapel is all you are, but then start getting greedy and dipping your fingers into all this other stuff, especially in MLM. Like nobody can really argue with the Ponzi scheme, but the fact that they're clearly not relying only on God, and that's if you can't. It's kind of like in the same way that my cousin noticed that the pastor's kids had the nicest clothing. Like that shouldn't be. Obviously, he gets his money from what we tithe, but if you're dedicating yourself to the Lord, you shouldn't be concerned about if your kids have like brand new sunglasses and all this stuff. And I know that you can probably argue with it back and forth, but I just I I don't think that's okay. Like if I was going to be a pastor and have kids, I would probably want to live minimally, right? Like I don't know about you, but I would try to follow like what Jesus said, where like okay, if a town doesn't like you, like take the dust off your feet and get out of there. Like and only carry your supper with you. That's it. Like pass light. And some people can take that literally. I would think that that's what a good church is, or a godly, not even just a church, just a godly place is doing. And if those people have a great relationship with God, they're not going to be getting involved with stuff like this. Like obviously, you're not supposed to judge a person for the religion or what judge you're not supposed to judge a person or what is it you're not supposed to judge a religion based off a person, but when you have enough instances like this, it's like you can judge the fruit, right? You can judge that something is toxic about this fruit.
Yes. I couldn't agree more with you.
Only Calvary Chapel, Golden Springs. Yeah, and that's from 2003. And Raul Reese, oh yeah, he's another Calvary Chapel kind of pope. he he had I forget exactly what his coming was, where he was like, I think he was gonna like kill himself, and then he read a note and knew it was from God or something. That's one of his stories. But yeah, Raw Reese as well. I would say that he was probably like second to Chuck Smith. Calvary Chapel or Calvary Chapel of Henderson. I think when I put this one in, okay, yeah, I was just trying to get official date of when they like this when they filed on 1991. So
Gotcha.
yeah, because some people obviously have never heard of this, but when I think like yeah, I think I titled it 34 years old in 1991. So I meant Calvary Calvary Chapel by that point has been around for like 30 years. Because if we're seeing that it was in 91 and then doing the math from some of the other ones when it started with like 25 people, I was just trying to categorize and make like a timeline for myself. Like I don't think this has any um like any arrests or anything like that. This is just extra evidence of what's going on with Calvary. Okay, yeah. So like that one I put in there, even though it's a bit more recent, because that's basically how a lot of the Calvary Chapel started. And like they were meeting here at my house for years, and then they, excuse me, like they asked my parents to host a Bible study, and kind of like what you said, the coercion and control, like that's how it starts. They're like, "Oh, you're saving us by letting us meet here. You're gonna either do great things or God's gonna reward you greatly for this." And like our whole living room was like a bunch of people there. And as I got older, they stopped because we were meeting in a school for a while, and then we met in a like they finally built a church. But apparently, that's what Calvary Chapel tends to do is when they're not fully established, like the megachurch ones are in LA, they kind of I don't want to say they weasel their way in, but they kind of do things like this. They'll meet at a Ramada Inn, or they'll meet somewhere else first, save up their money, get their audience, and then they officially make their huge thing. And I know even the property here, it's pretty massive, and they're saving up to buy the property next to it because they want to have like a little housing development for themselves. It's like they really do want to create a compound. The way that you read like I don't know the Children of God had or all these different ones. Like I think the Children of God changed their names, but like any of those documentaries you read or hear, that's pretty much what Calvary Chapel is doing here in El Centro. And like I didn't even realize that until I said it, but yeah, they're creating like a compound and they're saving up right now to buy the property next to it. And these are like huge, like they used to grow crops there, so they're huge lots. And the only thing I can think of is like they meet people like we talked about with my mom, where it's a super vulnerable moment, and it's what is it? Wrong place, wrong time.
And this article was published in 2021. So this one's a lot more recent that they're doing this. And so you can assume
Mhm.
that, this pattern is still obviously continuing to this day and probably way more rampant than it was even 5 years ago.
Mhm. Okay, now this one was an interesting one. Yeah, like he has like the McDonald's, but with instead of the McDonald's logo, it's Calvary Chapel on it.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I think that that's when I started calling it like the McDonald's of Christian churches, because it very much is. Like he went to Calvary Chapel Downey in Southern California, and this is basically his testimony of like how things just started to not seem right to him. And it's a great read for anybody who who wants extra evidence. But for when I was reading this, I was like, I didn't want to read this, but I knew I was like, I need to read these things. I can't remain ignorant. Like I know Jesus was this guy. I'll study the Jewish studies from an academic perspective. I'm going to do everything I can. But when I read things like this, and like he says, there is a tendency among New Age born again Christian groups to promise people, and like I just think that California exploded with, I don't want to say drug addicts, but people who were like, hippies. They were looking for something, right? We all like to escape. And so some of those people were filling, that empty space in their heart with drugs. And then Calvary Chapel came along and like went to them too. That's the thing. I think that's why Calvary Chapel succeeded so much, is because they went to those places. They were going looking for people. And when they saw those people, whether they were drug addicts or homeless or just hanging out at the beach, like beach bums, like I know that that's how they got my pastor, because he used to be like a surfer in San Diego. And so I'm sure that one day they came and they were like, oh, You want, like, you want salvation, or do you know where you're going when you die? Like, something like that. And
Yeah,
like I don't want to laugh at it, but because these are serious things. Like, 'cause, like, I'm still a believer, right? You're a believer, right? Like I know we have a creator, but I know that I don't need to go to Calvary Chapel to have that relationship. That's where I'm at.
100%. And like you said, nobody wants this to be true. Like this was your whole life. Like this had to have been so crushing and devastating beyond measure to like reconcile with. And that's why a lot of people look away from it because it's so devastating. We all want
Mhm.
places that we frequent and people that we have grown up with and communities that we've been a part of to be safe and to be things that we're proud of and like to be things that we can look on fondly. Nobody wants to wake up and realize that they devoted so much time and energy and emotion and time to something that was corrupt and something that wanted to exploit them and something that was coercing them and manipulating them and abusing them. It's devastating, and so that's why you're so brave for doing what you're doing, because not a lot of people have the courage to. And it's not because they're bad people, it's because they're good people who were taken advantage of for so long that it's so painful. It's too painful for them to even consider that they've become abuse victims. Because like how we were saying, most people go to these places to get healing and to become stronger and to be supported, and to realize that like, oh my gosh, I was actually victimized in my time of need. That's a really hard thing for somebody to admit to themselves and then to, proactively move away from, because that's how abuse is. It makes you keep coming back for more when it's done
Mhm.
in these covert ways.
No, it's true. It's like once you finally have peace, you're like your body is used to the like being on high alert. Like your antennas are constantly up. So when he finally does settle, you're like, wait, I feel like something's off.
And if I could, there's a couple parts of this article. I was just kind of skimming it, and it
Mhm.
really kind of validates a lot of what you're saying. It says, I don't even know how to say his last name, Dreyer suggests that those attracted to such high control authoritarian groups are trying to make sense of a world that doesn't make much sense, a world full of violence and broken families and broken communities. Once a member has left the church, he says, the letdown can lead to serious psychological scarring. Quote, almost always there is a lack of self-confidence in making your own decisions again.
Mhm.
Often it takes a lot of work to make those abilities strong again. So again, they take your agency, they take your ability to think, they're making your decisions, they're controlling you. And then one other sentence that really stood out was, to insiders, it provides a feeling of unity within the group while distancing the members from the unwashed outside world. So it
Mhm.
also like makes you, emotionally, physically, mentally dependent, because it's like what makes sense. They convince you that like this is the group, this is where you're at, nothing else matters. No other books matter, no other people matter. Like this is your spot, this is your community, this is what you can learn. And it reminds me of stories that you hear of people coming out of jail, how they struggle to adjust to the outside world, which is so messed up because jail's like, who wants to go to jail, but there's
Yeah.
criminals that will get released and then commit a crime again just to go back, because they enjoy that feeling of like, the predictability and like knowing what's going to happen and like consistency and even maybe community, if they feel like they can fit in there and they don't fit in the outside world. And so you see how this guy's like really validating what you're saying in a very compassionate way. And it's not bashing religion. It's saying that
Mhm.
there's bad people and bad things happening in safe spaces that we need to, we need to acknowledge and hopefully eradicate with testimonies like yours and this brave, gentleman that's also testifying in this article.
Absolutely. His words are exactly how I felt. Because I'm like, okay, I know I'm not an idiot, but why do I question if what I'm doing is correct? You know how there's, what is it, imposter syndrome, and then there's like where
You're like
you're
gaslighting
underestimate.
yourself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, it's like I I know I can do things, but I don't have. It's like I know I can be confident, like I know who I am, but I have to second guess everything because I've never had like me embrace. I think
And
that's
you
the
said
best way
earlier,
to say
like
it.
they take your identity, they take your
Yeah.
agency and your identity. So you can't say no. And then you also can't be who you are. You have to be who they mold you into being.
Mm-hmm.
It's very confusing to walk away from that. It's like exciting to like be able to do finally, but then it's like, oh crap, what do I do now? Like everything I've ever known was obeying them and being told what to do and having them make my decisions. And they were my community. Like they isolated me from everybody else, you know, and that can be really destabilizing for people.
Mm-hmm.
I like that article. Maybe I'll, if you have it online, I'll link it. I think that it does a good job, just from the little bit that I skimmed, of kind of summarizing our conversation today in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I can look up that one.
Okay, this one.
Calvary Chapel in Miami Beach. So this, I again was just, I wanted a specific date on like what side of the like when it was reaching that side of the country. So this is 93. So and I think the other one we saw was 90.
I think so too, right around there.
Mm-hmm, that was in Florida. So basically, it took California. So it took Southern California over in like the 70s, and then it just kept spreading. And again, their method is like, oh, we're just a little small Bible study, and then they got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh yeah, so ousted radio pastor to join Calvary Chapel staff. I thought that was interesting because I was like, okay, so I obviously want to know why he got ousted.
100%.
Ousted, right? And if he got ousted, why is Calvary Chapel now welcoming him in? Bringing church to others. Yeah, 2009. In seven.
Bringing church and hope to inmates.
Oh yeah, and then this one was Skip Isaac, who was clapping back at his critics. And I believe he's still at the New Mexico Calvary Chapel. There's like a massive one out there. Yeah, like it looks more like
it's like a crime book.
Yeah, or like a crime book or an art piece. That's what I think when I look
at
it. I'm like, this would be a great museum piece, but why is this on the cover of one of the Calvary Chapel posts? Like, and that's how I know it was just, it couldn't be anything other than just the money operation, like, or at least Skip personally, he, because from what I looked at, I believe he has the most books published, and that's probably why he's remained at the top of the Calvary Chapel charts, because he's, who even knows if he's writing these, but he's pushing them.
Gosh, can't imagine how much money he has or had if he's still alive.
Yeah. Texas parishioners worship despite cremated or ruined church, and I think the church. I think why I said this was because it was it just mentioned Calvary Chapel in it. So I think
and it shows again sort of that, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like lack of compassion. Like there's a tornado that ruined the church, which probably means that it devastated the area that it was in. And they're like, oh, we don't care if you guys are all, you lost your home. Come over here and worship. To me, it just seems like a little bit of like lack of compassion for maybe what that area was like going through. Like I get that, maybe prayer and being with community is a good thing, but it's like, it seems like they're trying to make a point for their reputation more than caring about the people that go to the church.
No, yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
It's like something for an image. Like we're going to make the news, it's going to make us look good, instead of like, oh, maybe we should spend some of this money that everybody in our church gave us for all these books and help people like get their homes back together and like go buy them stuff and like help. Like,
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Oh, another sex abuse one.
Yep. And this one is, I forget where.
Let's see. Does it say? Country August.
Aeneas County. I think that's where it's at. So let me see.
Go Calvary Chapel.
Oh, it's mentioning Tampa now. So I think that one might be in Florida.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's an example of me. I was part of a lot of different, what do you call them? Ministries. I was part of a lot of different ministries, and one of the ministries that I did, I think a lot of churches have this VBS, um, like it's like Vacation Bible School, and at Vacation Bible School, we put on like play every single night. So it's like 30 minutes every single night, um, Monday through Friday, I think, and or sometimes Sunday through Thursday. And the kids come in every day, and like they're doing little activities, and then at the end of it, you put on a performance. And so I did that for like 3 years. And my little cousin is there in the back, he's looking away. But these are just like little kids who are part of the church, and I know that I was probably like one of the little kids too. Like, they give you a certificate for going, and that obviously doesn't mean you're best friends with Jesus, but like that's kind of like what they're pushing forward with this. Like after each performance, they they do like a roll call for Jesus. So they're like, if you want Jesus in your life and all that, like you raise your hand. And I don't think that's necessarily bad, but what I know is from my cousin being there, he wasn't raising his hand, but he was like looking around and saw all the other kids standing and raising their hands. So he was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. And that little example is, I know that there are people like that everywhere because peer pressure is a thing,
Yeah.
but when it's happening, like that probably happened to me as a child, like what he did, where he's like, oh, I guess everybody wants Jesus, so I want Jesus too. And I don't think that that was healthy at all, because you're supposed to make you're supposed to make your relationship with God yours and yours alone. And that type of activity is what's continuing. That's basically what I wanted to say. Is like that activity just keeps continuing. You look around, you're like, oh well, so and so volunteered, so I guess I'll volunteer. And it's like I don't want to badly about the people I know, but unfortunately, it's like I didn't choose to be raised in this. They put me in this, and as a result, now I have to speak my piece. And I'm glad that I was able to entertain kids and do some of that. But I know, like at one point, they kicked me out of the children's ministry because I had just started working at a dispensary, and I was doing their social media and things. And that's part of where they told me, they're like, okay, you can't be part of the kids ministries anymore, but you can still do the parent ministries. And that was part of the tug and pull, where they were like, they didn't want me around kids because of the cannabis. And at the same time, like they knew that I used cannabis for my epilepsy, but also the dispensary where I was working at, the whole first year we were only medicinal. So, and not even just that, like my parents encouraged me to apply for there. So I thought like, oh, I have my parents' blessing working here. That's great. And I'm actually helping people. Like I was like the go-to CBD kid because of my epilepsy. And it just, that kind of led to a bit of,
Like outcasted you.
yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely outcast. That's not the word I was looking for, but definitely, yeah. It led to a bit of an altercation, only because that's when the church could see that I wasn't like bending over anymore. Like I was thinking for myself. Like they were starting to
Exactly.
say things like, yeah, they were starting to say like, We don't think what you're doing is leading others to God. Stuff like that. That's so broad, but at the same time, it's like they're basically pointing their finger at you and saying, "Hey, you sinner." And like I just remember thinking, like, well, the Bible also says to not be gluttonous. So like, what about all these overweight people? It wasn't making sense for me. Like I could tell, like you're just picking and choosing. You don't like that I'm doing this, and you want me to be like, little obedient Caleb. And that was like, I don't know, almost some years ago now. But I started to feel that. It was in, what do you think? It was like in 2020, like maybe right before the pandemic. I I really started to feel like, hey, you guys keep trying to like box me in. I don't like this. So I was I was trying to think for myself, but because I was thinking for myself, it was so like combative, if that makes sense. I had my own two voices in my head, and one was trying to tell me to think for yourself, and the other one was saying, no, don't, because you've never thought for yourself.
Right, just like that guy said in that article, it can cause like psychological distress for people when they leave, or in your case, you were still attending the church and part of the community, but you were also starting to figure out your own identity and explore things you cared about, and it went outside of the realm of the path they had set out for you. And so they ostracized you and made you feel bad and gaslit you, and then took away some of the privileges that they gave you as a punishment for it.
Mm-hmm.
Really sad. Great examples here that you're giving of all of this.
And this shows my parents in the top photo with a priest. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, so the top one is my parents when they were still Catholic. And in a way, actually, I don't know, I'll say this and see if you agree. Like, they look super happy.
Yeah.
When Catholicism is supposed to be this like boring, strict thing. At least that's what I was always taught from Calvary. But if you scroll down, like as you continue to scroll down, they do look kind of happy right there. He's kind of smiling, and my dad's like playing with their foot or whatever. But then as you go down even further, to me, now that's my dedication. It seems like they got further from the child.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And is that just me like looking too much into it, or does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Ooh, I keep meaning to scroll up. I'm just going to use these things. No, you're absolutely right. You can see the sequence. Like, it just seems like they kind of had their soul taken from them at some point between all of this.
Yeah.
It's completely different. Even to them, how you were saying, like standing up tall and like looking confident. And then the bottom, it's like their shoulders are hunched over, their heads are down. Nobody's smiling.
Right.
That's fascinating. What a great kind of sequence that you were able to like intuitively look at and read those expressions the way that they are there. That could have easily just been kind of missed if you don't really know what you're looking at.
But that's what I see when I see that. I see like the children getting separated from the parents, and exactly what you said. They're kind of defeated in their demeanor.
Right. And then how you were just saying with the child, like you can see the separation super clearly between these three and the closeness, and sort of the difference. Wow, that's really fascinating. That's like a great little case study right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go to this one.
Oh yeah, that's.
Oh, looks like you were just zooming in on them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's my grandmother getting baptized, and I briefly mentioned earlier, like when she got baptized, I don't even think she knew what was happening. I think it's just because my parents seemed super successful to that side of the family, so they were like, okay, whatever, like we'll have whatever they're having. And
oh my gosh,
yeah,
it's like
literally,
it's like a public pool too, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. You're right. It's a public pool. We like, I guess we got permission from the local community college and had like, I know that I was baptized that day too, but they was, I don't know, there were like 100 people there. And it, like, when my grandfather, my dad passed away, or right before he passed away, I was there and my dad, like, knelt down really quickly and he was like, "Do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior?" And my grandpa was just kind of like, like, yeah, like really like almost out of it on his deathbed. And when he got up, like, my, excuse me, my dad's older brother and older sister eventually told the family like that my dad did some Calvary Chapel voodoo. And so I know that that might be like an extreme bit, but because my most of my family is still Catholic, like when my dad did that, obviously my dad just loved his dad and like just trying to, do the best thing he at least knew he could do. But um that created like a schism because then my parents became like the thought that they could be in a cult that was like solidified when my dad did that. And my dad was like, I just need my dad to hear, or my dad was thinking he needed to hear his dad say like that Jesus Christ is his Lord and Savior and all that, but that it could all be done like almost instantly. And I'm not saying that God can't forgive our sins. Obviously, God can do anything. But when like I'm, there's such a war in my mind because I'm like, I understand my dad's older siblings. They were probably thinking like, what the heck is Frank doing? Because Frank's my dad, and they were like, he never did this. Like, what the heck? We already had the priest come and read him his last rites or whatever. So to them, it was like my dad was like throwing away everything that they just did. But obviously to my dad, he's like, he's saving my grandpa. And, but regardless, objectively, it was just weird. It was, and I don't mean for it to be a laughing matter, but that I knew even then, I was like, this is weird. Like, I don't think this is what, I mean, who knows what normal is, but I don't think this is what families do. They don't, like, I know death can cause breaks in families, but it was contributed to because of my dad's, like, it goes back to the us and them mentality. Like, that's what cults have, right? It's like, you're not Calvary Chapel Christian, I'm Calvary Chapel Christian. That's pretty much the way they see it. And, like, I've tried to explain to my parents, you realize, like, Mormons call themselves Christians, like, Jehovah's Witnesses call themselves Christians. Obviously, you don't consider them Christians. So can you understand how some people might not even consider you Christian? And they're like, yeah, but those people are wrong. So it's like, whatever angle I tried coming at it with my parents, like, in a way, I thank God for all of this because I know the Bible better. Like, I've had to, like, I had to read it in order to understand the things that were happening wrong around me. But um, I would never obviously want this on anybody because at 30 years or 33 years old now, but like as a 33-year-old, I'm like, was I reading too much into that? Was I not reading too much into it? Because even if I was masking from my autism, I know that I was traumatized growing up in that church, wondering like we're all aware of peer pressure, right? Like I think that's just a social human thing. But when you're going to church, your first thought shouldn't be, I'm going to be judged. And that at least was always my first thought.
100%. And even looking at this photo here, your grandmother, it looks to me like she probably wasn't doing very well health-wise, and even though it's a different situation than you and what you went through doing labor, because you could still walk and function and obviously didn't need carried. It still goes to, it's sort of that we want our reputation as a church and the things that we do and to promote things like there could have been a news heading of like, woman that couldn't walk baptized, even though your grandma's probably like, why are you guys doing this to me? Like, I don't want this. But the way that it's like the perception of like, we're the best, we overcome everything. Like, we're staying true to our church's guidelines and to what they want. And so it like contributes to the church's reputation and perception, while potentially putting distress and harm on the people involved with whatever the task is, whether it's this baptism, which looks extremely distressing and uncomfortable for your grandma, or your experience where you have conditions that need that can be debilitating, and you need special care in certain ways, and they had you do stuff that you shouldn't have been doing, that you didn't expect to do, and that you probably didn't want to do, honestly, and so it's fascinating how cults function that way, to where if, say, your parents had never gone to this church or anybody in this photo, and it was just randomly suggested to them about your grandma, like, hey, let's get her out of bed, even though she can't walk. Let's put her in this wheelchair. Let's go take her to a public pool and baptize her. They'd probably be like, that's the most ridiculous idea I ever heard. Like, let the woman rest, but because it's like this virtuous church, and they have these special guidelines, and you guys are warriors of God, and like overcome everything and follow and obey and abide, it shows like how you said there's not boundaries, boundaries are very easily crossed and made to look virtuous in the process, while potentially inflicting harm and distress on people.
You hit the nail on the head with the boundaries. It's like I never had boundaries growing up, like never, and it is influenced and upheld joining Calvary Chapel. It's like I now have to reevaluate my entire life, and I'm grateful that I've learned what I've learned. I've had an opportunity to do a lot, even with being limited by Calvary's, but like, I don't want to say I wouldn't have it any other way, because obviously it'd be great to not have grown up in a cult, but I know that this is for a reason. Like, that's what I have to hold on to, and I know that God isn't going to judge me for what I did or even didn't do in Calvary, right? He's like, I know that God would be like, well, Caleb, I let you be put somewhere and you figured your way out. That's what I think God would tell me.
Absolutely. And you can see how you always resisted it through your testimony. This wasn't something that ever made sense to you, even though you went along with it because that's what you were groomed to do. That's what was normal. But you've questioned it ever since you were a child, and God sees that too. He sees the moments of resistance to things that are abusive and notices that. And I think it's amazing that this can travel through so many different family lines, and nobody sees it until one day a Caleb comes along and nothing about it like makes sense, even though you're forced to participate in it and it's something that you spend a lot of your life doing. It still isn't something that fully aligns with you. And like, it's amazing that you and other survivors have that within them, even though it wasn't something that you were taught. And even though you didn't have strong examples of that around you, of people asking questions and using discernment and having boundaries, yet for some reason, you and others, there's these rare gems that are in these. And I love all the people. Like, my heart breaks for all these people. I'm not saying that, I'm not putting people on a hierarchy or pedestal. Like, these are victims, but it's just, it's amazing to me that some rare people can see through it, even though they have no idea what they're looking at. They don't even have words to express why something doesn't feel good, or why it seems wrong, or why maybe I don't want to do this, or should we be doing this? The curiosity and the quote unquote troublemakers and the ones that kind of disobey, and I think that that's just amazing that you had that discernment, even though you didn't have the vocabulary for it or know that this was even abuse. You somehow always carried that with you, and you were never fully able to be controlled, or you never fully obeyed. You always had the curiosity about knowing who you are versus being put into a mold of what they wanted you to be. And I think you have an amazing purpose and mission ahead of you. And I'm so grateful to get it kicked off here on this podcast episode. And I'm really excited to see what comes about it in your journey and how many people that you impact and influence and give a voice to, whether in Calgary or other situations similar. Because it's a big problem. A lot more people are involved in these cult systems than anybody wants to admit. And there's probably even people listening that are working somewhere or involved with some type of club or, fraternity type thing that are thinking about it themselves. Like, could I be? And that's what we should all be asking ourselves.
Absolutely. One thing that I don't know if many people are aware of this, but so Calvary Chapel is named Calvary after Calgary, which is the place where Jesus was crucified. So Golgotha. I think that's what it was called in Greek. Golgotha. So Calvary is named after that. So if you do the etymology of it, really what it is Gold Chapel. So if you want to look into the esotericism, or wait, is it esoteric? There you go. Sorry, if you look into the esoteric meanings of these things, like the dove that they use, doves already have an esoteric symbolism, dating back to Babylon. But the skull thing, that's also why connecting those dots. I'm like, they're calling themselves the Church of the Skull. If you follow the etymology correctly, that's what it is. Golgotha, it was a skull. Like the mountain looked like a skull, I think. And so, again, whether these people understand it or not, the Bible talks about how there are principalities, right? Like a nation can develop a principality, and I believe that that's what Calvary Chapel has done. They are developing. I mean, there's always been something of pirates or skull cults and things like that, or skull and bones, that was at Penn State, and I affiliated with that, and I know the only reason I got recruited into a fraternity was because they were like, hey, that guy might do something, but it wasn't because I was a huge bro or anything. That's not me. But all those things, like my fraternity, it's Chi-Phi, and so they have something called a tippet, and it's basically X in a circle with the line from the 5. But basically, all those things are symbols, and I mean, you're aware of symbols from doing these interviews, and not only that, I studied at advertising public relations, specializing in the PR, but understanding that advertising as a whole is psychological, and they use these symbols to control people. I think it was Manly P. Hall that said the world is run by signs and symbols, and I don't think people understand whether they're going to Calvary or McDonald's or somewhere else. I don't think people are understanding the effect that these signs and symbols have on us, especially if you're constantly seeing it and constantly being bombarded, whether it's with a cross on the Bible or whatever it is. You're constantly being bombarded with these signs. And I understand also from studying media that everything that we see that we're conscious of, our subconscious is processing everything else, right? So you can't actually claim what your subconscious knows unless you're doing developmental work and you're actually looking into what triggers you, and you're realizing okay, basically all the uncomfortable stuff that people don't want to do, right? Until you actually do that uncomfortable work, you are susceptible. Every person on earth is susceptible to being controlled by these symbols. And I that's why I say who knows if Calvary Chapel actually started on the beaches. That's just their story. But all great I mean all great titans or even corporations, they all have a feel good story, right? It's and to me that's what I think when I think of Calvary Chapel now. I mean, obviously the washed image is gone for me because of what I've experienced, but I have to like stop myself every single day from like thinking, oh, this is also bad about Calvary, because I don't want to live my life always focused on the negative and always focused on the negative of Calvary Chapel, right? Like I'm only gonna let myself do this for, I don't know, maybe like 5 more years, and then I'm like, okay, Caleb, like start putting it, start filing it away. But those subconscious symbols, that's why I know Calvary Chapel has like their method figured out, because they do their worship, they have their TV screens, they say they only focus on one or two verses or like a couple verses, but all that's doing is like you look at that one verse and then you hear them talk about it for like 30 minutes, and then you hear them like bring up a second or third verse, and then you hear them talk about that for 30 minutes, and the whole time they're showing you things on TV screens, so they're distracting you, and they it, it seems very much so like it's all just copy and paste, like it's all it seems formulaic. That's what I'm looking for. It seems formulaic, and they have their formula down.
And that's what mind control is, being able to systematically, in a very organized way, keep things repeated, keep control, keep the control of information, keep grooming, everything that you're explaining. You don't need machines and technology to mind control somebody. Of course, on some levels, there is that degree of it. But you see how, like you said, you can control somebody by having them be loyal to a symbol and identifying with it, having it be something that they carry with them the rest of their lives. And that, at a place like Penn State, they encourage their children to now go partake in that, because that symbol means so much to them and what that experience was. And so you see how symbols are deeply embedded in occultic activity and cult activity, and how they really go together. They use so many of our senses and emotions and physical. They use every type of way that they can to impact us, to get us attached to that thing. And so we're involved with it on every single level, from our soul to our heart, to emotionally, to mentally, physically. They look at all those different ways of getting us to be attached to something, and it's crazy to think the power of like a symbol or a sign or a word or a slogan, like the power that those things have over us, even just in everyday life. Listening to a commercial for a soda, and then all of a sudden you want to go to the store and get one, or you're just shopping and you're like, oh, I should get this. And it's like, wait, why did I want this? Like, I wasn't even craving it. Well, the commercial told you to get it, And so it's very, very interesting how that proliferates also in these cult systems that you're talking about. And it's awesome that somebody like you is able to now reflect and see that, because it's amazing how unconscious that is for so many people who are still in these systems. They have no idea that their obedience is to, things that aren't even tangible a lot of times. And so I'll put these back up. Maybe we'll go through that one's the same one. Okay, let's look at this.
Okay, yeah, that was just the back of the 3 photos with the dates.
Oh, okay. Shows the years 1988. 2012 and 1993.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh wait, I was looking at the 2012. This was a different date. I think that's somebody's birthday. Maybe 1991 or 2. Is that what that was?
Yeah, December 91 or Jan 92.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at the bottom part. She turned 21 on that date. So this is 1988 to 1991 or 92, and then 1993. And so that's even like such a short span of time too, for those photos that we showed earlier. And to think about like the demeanor of like how much was taken potentially from them during that time, just from the expressions.
They're so depleted by the time I'm photographing with them. Oh, this is so the mission trip to Ensenada, and I put a marking over one of the person's face just because they were technically underage. But the fact that they even had an underage person there too, it's like we were all going, and what I was told was there's a new campus in Ensenada, and we're going to help them fellowship. And then we get there, and they're having us like like I think if you go to the next photo, there's there's probably me with like a wheelbarrow. Yeah, that's like and we were mixing like the actual like cement sludge. Like we were doing everything that construction workers do. And I was just, I mean, you can see I'm pretty thin. I'm not like I'm 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 I I don't want to say I shouldn't have been there. Thank you for saying that earlier. But like I'm glad I was there so I can look back on this. But I went there thinking I need to get closer to God. I remember that was on
Right.
my mind. I went there thinking I need to get closer to God. This is going to help me get closer to God. And at one point I like shared, it might be in the photo after. I think I uploaded a different one. I think I'm on stage. Yeah. So like they asked me to share my testimony, and so I talked about some stuff in college that I had done that was wrong, but otherwise we were like speaking to like Mexican spelling. So it's not that my words weren't useless, but it's like, so you're bringing me here to Mexico so I can do a bunch of free labor, and then you want me to talk to these Mexican felons and try to relate with them? Like that's just a lot. And when I look back on it, I want to say that it's just ridiculous. It's like they probably didn't take me seriously. They probably were looking at me like, who's this spoiled American standing there? Like he probably doesn't know. Like he doesn't know the street life like we do. And I know that I'm not the only person who was thinking that and who has done that as part of Calvary Chapel, because like I knew somebody else who went to New York City and did a ministry there, and they had told me, they were like, what, like how can I actually relate to these people that are living the projects? Like I can't actually relate to them. And the issue isn't us relating or not. That the issue that I just want to point out is like we shouldn't have even been there. Like we're not the right people to be there. Like thank God I was there so I can look back on it and comment on how ridiculous this is. But I should not have been in that position, whether it was because of my health, like you said, or because of like the
You're not a
trafficking.
you're just not a construction worker. Like there should have been
Yeah.
a construction team there, and you guys should have been there as support to help guide the mission that you came out there for, which was to follow God and to help, build this new like sanctuary that they were promoting you guys for and like making you feel special about. And like I want to comment too, just going back on this photo, it eerily reminds me so much of the photos that I see of trafficking victims with their parents, and it's a way of gaslighting where they take photos like this and then later on they're like, well, you looked happy. Like what do you mean that you were being
Hmm.
trafficked or abused by your parent? Like you were smiling whenever I would see you with them. And it's like, yeah, because that's how abuse works. Like they want it to feel like you're special and that you're good for doing it, and even when I hear testimony about satanic ritual abuse survivors, they're told so many times that they're chosen for this ritual, this child sacrifice, whatever it is.
Hmm.
The children are being groomed to think that they're special for participating in crime. Abuse can look very different from what we think. You'd never look at this and think that these are people being used for jobs that they have no experience in, that they shouldn't be doing, that some of these people might have health issues and should not be at all participating in something like this. Like you guys all look like you feel special for being there, and that the words that they told you of why you were there meant a lot to you. That's why
Hmm.
all of you were out there, because of those things. And in return, the church is exploiting you, and you don't even realize it because it feels so good to be out there because what they told you.
Yeah. And the guy on the end. Oh, here, we go
Fuck.
back to the. So I'm right there in the green on one side, and the guy on the opposite end in the maroon shirt, he ended up splitting from this Calvary Chapel. Like he got in a fight with the pastor over, I don't know, whatever, but he ended up deciding, I'm going to go start my own church. And so that's what's happened with a lot of, I don't know Calvary Chapel everywhere, but I know that at least here, like he wasn't the first youth pastor to do that. There was another one who we still don't know why they just stopped getting along, and he was like, okay, I'm going to go start my own church. And if like one person does that, okay. But like I said before on this podcast, like if you notice so many things happening over and over and over and over again, something's wrong. And that's what I realized after this guy left. I was like, wait, this guy I kind of grew up with, like he was also a CASA child. I don't know if you know what that is, where it's like a foster child. So I know that he was probably preyed on because, you know, if you're a foster child, you obviously you want family, you want that acknowledgement, that love, and he did something wrong or something the pastor Pete, the one who's still there, didn't like, and so he said, well, I'm going to go start my own. And that has happened multiple times now, and each time it's made me think. After, you know, I'm finally thinking for myself, I'm like, wait, why did they leave? Like, even this guy, even though I didn't think everything he did was perfect, right? Like, none of us are perfect, but he invited me one time to speak for the youth. We did like an Instagram live, and I talked about, so I was still working at the dispensary, and I made it all very educational. I talked about like terpenes, the caryophyllene, and how that's like in oregano, but it's also in some cannabis. And so I was doing this very professionally, very educated, and he asked me to be a part of that, and I was surprised. I was like, but wait, I thought I'm not allowed to be part of any of the like youth ministry or any of the children's ministries anymore. And he was like, well, I got permission from Pastor Pete to do this. And so I was like, okay. So even then, I think that they didn't get along, but they just put on like a happy face for everybody, right? Because that's what you do, right? You do this when you're in a cult. You just, you know, smile and pretend like everything's perfect. And I look at this and kind of like what you said, yeah, the smiles, like I know that like the two guys in the back, they were absolutely happy to be there. And like I said something about the Bible, and one of the guys like immediately snapped and started like quoting the scripture verbatim. So I'm not trying to say that like they're a better Christian or I'm a better Christian. Like I know that I think that they were genuinely happy to be there, because they were the type that is like, I'm gonna lay down it all. I'm gonna give it my all. Whereas like me, like I had just come back from New York City. Like I had done some bad things, but also I was like taking note of everything. Like we said multiple times now. Like I was always a curious kid, and I always took note of things, even if I looked the other way or I pretended like I wasn't paying attention. I was always taking note. And I know that on that trip, there were even kids younger than us. This was like the older group. There was at least a dozen younger kids. So that's like, they're not even in the photo. They just, because they kind of separated us. They had like the young kids and then the older kids. And I guess they were like, older kids, you're gonna build, you know, you're gonna build an actual structure. You're gonna construct. And for the younger kids, I think they were having them clean or something like that.
Wow. It's fascinating. And then hearing about the different personalities and how you, on one side over here, you know, it didn't align with you. And the people in back that you're talking about, I don't mean that this offensively to them, I actually say it with a lot of compassion. The people that are genuinely happy to be there are like almost the most sad, because they're like the perfect people to prey on for a cult. You know, the ones that will be exploited with a smile on their face and not ever question it. And they're probably still doing it to this day, you know, not even asking a question and being taken advantage of, and not realizing that the mission that they're so proud of, and the company and the organization and the church and the people that they're so proud to be a part of, like, could care less about them. You know, they're just commodity. They're a human commodity to do tasks and to spend money and to, it's just really sad. It makes me really sad that's the case a lot of times. And like, you're the rare one that asks the questions and looks at things with a critical eye, and you should be really proud of that. I think that's amazing that you've always had that discernment, even though this had to have been so hard to get away from, even to the point of going on stage and sharing about your experience, even though part of you probably didn't feel good about it, about some of the things you had to talk about, you still did it. And I think it's amazing how you were able to balance that. And then eventually when it was the right time, defect from it fully and get away and, have this time that you can spend learning about your experience. And, I know 33 probably seems like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it was been all this time. But think about all the people that, were born into it and are going to die, never experiencing a day in their life of like getting away from this. They're just going to like go through it and like not ever question it in their whole life. Like, that's really sad. I'm so happy that you have so much of your life ahead of you that you can make an impact and figure out more of who you are and explore that and like get to go use your gifts and the things you're passionate about for things you want to instead of things that the cult wanted you to. I'm really grateful for that for you. And again, here I'm scrolling photos, all smiles once again.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's happy. Another one. Oh my gosh, that had to have weighed a lot. I mean, maybe it was just like something light.
Those were heavy. Yeah.
But that doesn't look, this guy doesn't look like he's, a construction worker.
No, he's not. You're right. He was just there. Oh, and this was I think it's unlisted. Yeah. But I just took a screenshot of it for the youth group, SOPC or Calvary Chapel. Recycled youth. I think that's what they called themselves. And that was just a screenshot, and I edited a video and like helped record something for them. So I was very involved for a bit, and I think that's why like I know cults groom, like everybody is groomed to some degree in a cult, and I think that's what they were doing for me, is they were trying to, little by little, they were bringing me, like they were giving me more and more responsibility, right? But I think that they knew that there was something off about me, whether it was my autism or just the fact that I was constantly questioning things, or if they wanted me to respond fully and I just didn't. They I'm sure that they saw me as some type of commodity that they could benefit from.
So happy you have all this footage still.
Oh yeah, and so that's like again a screenshot, but I think we made it and then just sent it to people or played it like at the church a couple times. But yeah, that's like a whole slideshow. I don't want to put everybody on blast, but just enough to show people that I'm not lying, that I'm not just making all of this up.
100%.
Oh, and then a pastor appreciation. That's the pastor's wife. So it was like, I don't know, like a 30-minute video that I went around and recorded people for Pastor Appreciation Day.
Wow.
And even when I was doing it, I was like, this seems weird. Like, it seems like they want me to honor him rather than just like, pay respect, if that makes sense. Oh, and then a different photo. That's my dad for part of the Vacation Bible School. He was one of the volunteers, and he still volunteered this past year. What he was is he was the principal for the school as well. So he had a lot of responsibility there, and I think that they were trying to bring me and my family in, because they brought my family in as a whole, since they had like the Bible studies here, but I think that they were really, really trying to, because my pastor has said multiple times he wants 50 years, and so he's like at year 45 maybe, and they don't know who's going to replace him, because a lot of the other pastors he got in a fight with, or they got burnt out, or they left to go open another one, like in Ensenada, or just, something else happened to them. He like kept holding on to it, but he's getting like so old now that I don't know who they'll replace him with. And not that that's my concern, but like he kind of did this to himself. He was so bent on getting 50 years as a pastor that he has like from my understanding, the church just keeps getting smaller and smaller. Like I think a lot of people who were watching my stories and were listening to me speak out, though I know a lot of them thought that I was crazy. I'm pretty sure that some of them that are in there, the same ones that like saw me at the dispensary, or the same ones that would message me privately, they're like Caleb was right. Like Caleb was seeing what I was seeing, and this I put up about it, but Caleb didn't. And so I have this photo again as evidence, but to show like I did have a good time. Like that was a good moment with my dad. That was cool. But does it make any of it right? No.
Right.
Oh, and then so that's like a photo, a screenshot from working at Abercrombie, and I figured I would put that just because. I mean, that was a good friend of mine, but since we talked about like the cult aspect, like I think that America is like full of a lot of cults, but like brands are cults even when people don't realize it. Like, do you understand what you're representing? Like, do you understand what you're wearing? And this doesn't mean to go, throw out all your clothes, but it's just if you are walking around unaware of what you're representing, you're disrespecting yourself. And I think that that can be done with the cross around your neck, like, or with just wearing a brand and not even understanding. But what I can say from the brand point of view, at least, is like I would have people be like, "Oh, I always wanted to work at Abercrombie," or "Oh, I loved Abercrombie." And I told them, I was like, "Your worries don't disappear the second you join Abercrombie." Like I started comparing myself to all the guys with muscles. Like, like you don't just all of a sudden it disappear. And I think that that's what cult tricks people into, whether it's Calvary, like, oh, your salvation is saved, you're in God's good grace, or if it's something like this. Like, I know Abercrombie isn't what it used to be. It's kind of like gone more, not like Forever 21 status, but it's like it's a bit more washed over. And but at this time, it was still like they can't call their workers models anymore, but they used to. They were like they were the stories going viral that like a girl didn't want to take off her hijab, so they put her in the back to kind of hide her because she wasn't the Abercrombie look. And so whether they're in a church, like a fraternity, even how I was, or this, like people need to understand discernment. If they don't have it, they need to get it, but they need to understand discernment, and they need to be able to discern between these things, because it's whether you want to call it a cult or a distraction from God, that to me it's the same thing. Like the cult is distracting you from the actual relationship with God. You're so focused on either the cult of the church and you're standing in it, or how good you look in these brand clothes. You know what I mean? Like it all becomes a distraction. And I know for sure that I was worshiping Abercrombie at that point. I was worshiping, you know what I mean? Like what and that's something I had to take a step back and realize, like, wait, what are you actually putting your energy towards? Like this Abercrombie's not going to make you a better person. Like, that's not, it's not going to get you into heaven. So what are you looking at it for other than just a job? Because this is what it just needs to be right now. And like I'm guilty of glorifying that, and it took me needing just to be humbled, right? Just to have a slice of humble pie. But for anybody else who thinks that they either might be in like a cult, whether it's work, like some of the most toxic workplaces, anybody can Google a list, and it says like there's a lot of turnover. It's like a family structure, they promote that. Um, and I used to think like, oh, that's just the name of the game for the news industry. You always have a rotating door. And that might be the name of the game for the news industry, but that doesn't make it healthy. Like it just because this is how the industry works doesn't mean it's okay, right? Like it not only are you in a room full of a bunch of gossipers, because that's what I've kind of deduced the news industry too. I'm like, it's a bunch of gossipers calling themselves reporters, trying to get people to worry about things that they don't need to worry about. And that's how they make the money. And I think that there are a lot of people, or hopefully people can hear and relate that to their own workplace and think, you know what? I might need to take a, not quit their job, but like take a step back, take a step back, listen more at work because like it's, it sounds lame to say, but it's the same things, right? It's that same formula. It's the us versus them group. It's the not questioning authority. It's right. Like if you look at all these, it's the same exact thing. And I had to really reflect and realize like, wait, you've just been going from cult to cult to cult to cult. And it was because you just wanted to feel belonging. Right? Because that's what any of us want. We all want to feel like we belong and we have a purpose. And unfortunately, that belonging gets taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, is Calvary Chapel head Chuck Smith carving for a child beater. So even there, they call him Calvary Chapel head. That's why we always knew him as like the Pope of Calvary Chapel. Like he could do no wrong.
I think that's the last one here. Man, what a amazing slideshow that you put together for today. That's so much information, and it's really cool to be able to tie it to your own experiences and to see you at the time that you were in that, and your family and the people that you cared about, and just how different a cult looks from the outside than what we think it should be. Thank you for your courage to break away. I know we didn't even get into your lawsuit. We didn't get through all of your testimony,
Oh, yeah.
but I know we've also been on here for a while, and I think everything that we have left can make for a really great part 2 or even part 3, if you want to come on a few times. But I just thank you with all my heart. The information that you gave today is priceless, and I know it's going to touch others and help people really observe, their own environment and surroundings in life. And that's exactly what we need to do right now. It's more important than ever with all this other control from, all these different ways, data centers, and, the control is just going to get worse. And so we have to take back our free will now and realize where it's being siphoned. And I'm just so appreciative and proud of you. And I hope you're proud of yourself. And I know, like I said, little Caleb's just beaming at you. He's so proud of the man that you became and that you're going to continue to become. And I just thank you with all my heart for everything that you shared today.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for providing a safe space. There aren't that many left in this world, so thank you for providing one, not just for me, but for you, everyone. I feel like even your audience feels a little safer. I know I feel safer when I listen to your podcast because I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't think of that, or I hadn't heard of that.
And before we go, do you have just a short word of advice for anybody on the brink of, oh my gosh, I'm relating to this, I'm in a cult, I want to leave? Do you have any just short words of advice for that person struggling or being where you were a year ago or less when you were thinking about leaving?
Keep your receipts, right? Receipts. We need our receipts. That way, we know we're not crazy either. But keep your receipts. And this probably sounds so cheesy, but trust God and have faith because sometimes that's all we can do.
Absolutely. And where can people connect with you on social media?
TikTok is probably what I'm most active on. That's my username right here. At Caleb John Fernández. It's my full name. And YouTube. I sometimes post on there, and because of everything that I've gone through, I'm like, what does Caleb actually want to say, right? Like, what instead of telling that person's story or promoting this or that, like, I'm finally at that point where I'm like, wait, what do I actually want to do? So I want to start like I have videos on my YouTube channel, but I wouldn't say I have like a channel I do there. Like yours is legit. Like I'm getting closer to that point, but I've been trusting God to make it super clear for me of what trajectory I can go on for this, because I ignored TikTok for a bit only because when I was working for the news, they had me focus on Facebook and Instagram so much more. But I kind of, because of my breaking away from the church on Instagram, I ended up just deactivating it because how I shared, I had people kind of like creeping on my profile. They were also looking at my stories, and people who I didn't even know. So I blocked a lot of people. I also like reverse engineered it because I would put someone who like a footage I owned, like I put them in a video that I posted because then I wanted to see like, is this gonna get their reaction? And of course it did. So I basically was like playing on Instagram. I wasn't using it the way people use it. Like for the last year, I basically was like I was doing a social experiment. That's pretty much what I was doing. And so I deactivated that, and otherwise though, like I don't have a book to push. If people want to support me on TikTok or YouTube, I appreciate it. But otherwise, thank you, Emma, for having me.
You're so welcome. I'm so honored to have you here, and I can't wait to do part 2 and learn more about you and dig into some of these topics. You know, this is like something I'm so passionate about because I just see how it's so pervasive in society and how we're all victims without even knowing it for control and people that have bad intentions for us, and that wolves hide in sheep's clothing all the time in front of us, and we don't know what we're looking at. And so what we'll do is we'll do part 2 at least. Maybe we'll have Caleb on as a returning guest and we can dig more into these topics. But you guys leave your comments below if you guys have questions for Caleb. That way we can answer them on the next episode. And please leave him some love and go support him on social media. It's really awesome and free. It's a great way to support survivors, just simply going on and interacting with their posts and reaching out. And especially if you're a survivor, if you're a cult survivor, whether you're out speaking about it publicly or not, I'd love if you guys went and supported Caleb and or reached out to him, especially if you're also a victim or a survivor of Calvary and want to have somebody to corroborate your story with. It would be amazing if you guys could go reach out to Caleb and share with him. And then also just, build a network. I think survivors are better when they're together, and abusers want all of you guys to be isolated and separated, just like you were whenever you were in the cult. So it's really powerful when we can get survivors together. So if anybody on the other side of the screen is a survivor and victim, again, please reach out to Caleb and check out his social media, DM him, and build a survivor network. You guys are stronger together. And I'll have his links below in the show notes. Please go connect. And you guys, we couldn't do this without you. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.